The Raptors chapter emerged during the tumultuous period of the 36th millennium, forged in the fires of the notorious 21st founding. This founding, later whispered among Imperial scholars as the Cursed Founding, represented one of the Imperium's most ambitious attempts at genetic manipulation of the sacred Space Marine gene seed. While many chapters born of this founding would later succumb to mutation, madness, or worse, the Raptors would prove resilient despite the genetic tampering that forever altered their physical appearance and combat philosophy. The Adeptus Mechanicus Genitors, who oversaw the 21st founding, sought to improve upon the Emperor's original work, attempting to eliminate perceived flaws in the gene seed of various Space Marine lineages. For the Raptors, the Mechanicus drew upon the genetic material of the Ravenguard, descendants of Primarch Corvus Corax. The Ravenguard gene seed had long been known for certain peculiarities, a tendency toward pale skin, dark hair, and eyes that gradually turned pitch black with age. These traits were reflections of their Primarch, whose own alabaster skin and raven dark hair had earned him his name. However, the genetic manipulations performed on the Raptors produced unexpected results. Rather than enhancing the melanin production characteristic of the Ravenguard, the alterations triggered the opposite effect. The new Space Marines developed a pronounced melanin deficiency, resulting in abnormally pale skin, light-colored hair, and eyes sensitive to bright light. This mutation, while not debilitating in combat effectiveness, created a stark visual distinction between the Raptors and their genetic forebears. Magos Biologes Heron Svent, one of the leading genitors involved in the founding, recorded his observations in a now-sealed archive on Mars. Subject chapter displays significant deviation from progenitor phenotype. Melanocyte function reduced significantly. Combat effectiveness remains within acceptable parameters, though environmental adaptation protocols must be monitored. Recommend continued observation for additional mutation vectors. The Raptors' genetic divergence extended beyond mere appearance. Their sensory acuity developed differently from typical Ravenguard successors. While they lacked the preternatural stealth capabilities of their progenitors, they developed enhanced long-range visual acuity and an innate ability to process tactical information with remarkable speed. These traits would later shape their combat doctrine significantly, pushing them toward a methodical, analytical approach to warfare that differed from the shadow operations favored by the Ravenguard. Initially designated as the Raptor Legion, the chapter established its first fortress monastery on the verdant death world of Badab Primaris in the Badab sector. The choice of a death world as their home was deliberate. The harsh environment would forge their neophytes in the crucible of constant danger, weeding out the weak and honing the survivors into adaptive warriors. The dense jungles and predator-filled swamps of Badab Primaris provided an ideal training ground for developing the situational awareness and tactical flexibility that would become hallmarks of the chapter. The early years of the Raptor Legion were marked by a period of intense self-definition. While they acknowledged their genetic heritage from the Ravenguard, the chapter's leadership recognized that their altered gene seed and unique circumstances required a distinct approach to warfare. Chapter Master Auric Valorous, the first to lead the Raptor Legion, was a pragmatic and forward-thinking commander who had previously served in the Death Watch. His experience fighting alongside battle brothers from diverse chapters gave him a broad perspective on Space Marine combat doctrines. "We are born of the Raven, but we shall hunt with our own talons," Valorous reportedly told his officers during the chapter's first conclave. "Our strength lies not in shadows alone, but in adaptation, in seeing the battlefield with clarity, and in striking with precision where the enemy least expects." Under Valorous guidance, the chapter developed a combat doctrine that emphasized tactical flexibility, long-range reconnaissance, and precision strikes. Unlike many Space Marine chapters that relied on overwhelming force or specialized combat styles, the Raptor Legion trained its battle brothers to be adaptable generalists capable of adjusting their tactics to any battlefield situation. This approach was partly born of necessity. As a newly founded chapter with limited resources, they could not afford to specialize too narrowly. The chapter's training regimens reflected this philosophy. Neophytes were not only taught the art of stealth as befitting their Ravenguard heritage, but also schooled extensively in battlefield analysis, marksmanship, and tactical improvisation. Scout squads were deployed for extended periods in the deadly wilderness of Badab Primaris, forced to survive with minimal equipment while completing complex mission objectives. Those who returned were hardened warriors who had learned to prioritize mission success over glory and pragmatism over tradition. This practical approach extended to the chapter's equipment and appearance. While many Space Marine chapters adorned their armor with elaborate heraldry and ritual decorations, the Raptor Legion opted for a more utilitarian aesthetic. Their armor was painted in muted greens and browns, colors chosen for their camouflage value rather than symbolic significance. Armor was modified for reduced noise and improved mobility, with unnecessary decorative elements removed or streamlined. The chapter's name itself underwent evolution during these formative years. Initially designated as the Raptor Legion, Imperial records indicate that by the end of their first century of existence, they had simplified their title to simply Raptors. This change reflected both their growing identity as a distinct chapter and their preference for straightforward practicality over grandeur. Inquisitor Calian Marcellus, who observed the chapter during this period, noted, "The Raptors display none of the pageantry common to Astartes formations. Their ceremonies are brief, their honorifics minimal. Even their battle cries are subdued compared to their more bombastic cousins. Yet in this restraint lies their strength. They waste no energy on appearance, reserving all for the kill." The decision to abandon the Legion suffix also served a political purpose. In the post-heresy Imperium, the term Legion carried uncomfortable connotations of the pre-Codex era when Space Marines operated in massive formations, rather than the chapter system established by Robute Guilliman. By dropping this term, the Raptors signaled their compliance with the Codex Astartes and distanced themselves from any hint of deviation that might draw unwanted scrutiny. This concern was not unfounded. As products of the 21st founding, the Raptors operated under a cloud of suspicion from the beginning. Other chapters created during this founding began to display troubling mutations and aberrant behavior within decades of their creation. The Fire Hawks suffered from spontaneous human combustion among their battle brothers. The Black Dragons developed bone growths that erupted through their skin. The Sons of Antaeus exhibited abnormal tissue density and resilience that sparked rumors of forbidden genetic tampering. Against this backdrop of genetic instability, the Raptors' relatively minor mutation, their reduced melanin production, seemed almost benign. Nevertheless, the chapter maintained vigilant monitoring of their gene seed for signs of further deviation. Apothecaries performed extensive testing on each batch of progenitor glands harvested from fallen battle brothers, and neophytes underwent rigorous screening before implantation. The chapter's genetic divergence also influenced their tactical preferences. Their pale skin and light sensitivity made them less effective in certain environments, particularly desert worlds with intense sunlight. Rather than viewing this as a weakness, the Raptors adapted by developing specialized equipment, enhanced auto senses, modified helmet lenses, and environmental protection systems that allowed them to operate effectively regardless of conditions. By the end of their first century, the Raptors had established a reputation as methodical, reliable warriors who prioritized mission success over martial glory. Their preference for careful planning, precision shooting, and tactical withdrawal, when necessary sometimes, earned them criticism from more aggressive chapters who mistook pragmatism for lack of courage. The Raptors, however, remained unmoved by such judgments, focused solely on effectiveness rather than perception. Chapter Master Valorous articulated this philosophy in his Doctrine of Adaptive Warfare, a text that would become foundational to Raptors training. The battlefield does not reward the proud or the stubborn. It rewards the adaptable. A Space Marine who dies unnecessarily has failed in his duty to the Emperor just as surely as one who retreats without cause. Our purpose is victory, not martyrdom. The early campaigns of the Raptors reflected this doctrine. During the Lycanthos Drift campaign, they deployed small kill teams to eliminate key enemy commanders rather than engaging in frontal assaults. In the Baelclaw incursion, they utilized their superior reconnaissance capabilities to identify and exploit weaknesses in enemy fortifications. Each victory reinforced their commitment to pragmatic warfare and cemented their identity as a chapter that valued results over tradition. The genetic inheritance from Primarch Corvus Corax manifests in the Raptors in ways both subtle and profound, though often divergent from their progenitor chapter. While the Ravenguard's gene seed typically produces battle brothers with skin that gradually darkens to an unnatural pallor, eyes that turn solid black, and hair as dark as their Primarch's namesake, the Raptors exhibit a fascinating reversal of these traits. The genetic modifications made during the 21st founding altered the expression of these characteristics, resulting in Astartes with unusually light skin, pale hair, and eyes sensitive to bright light. Apothecary Varencaris, who served as the chapter's chief apothecary for over 2 centuries, documented these differences in extensive detail. His geneseed purity logs, maintained in the chapter's Fortress Monastery archives, note that Raptors' battle brothers still experience the gradual transformation of their physical appearance, but in the opposite direction of their genetic forebears. Where Ravenguard battle brothers see their skin darken to an almost deathly pallor over centuries of service, Raptors' skin becomes increasingly alabaster, developing an almost translucent quality in the oldest veterans. Despite these outward differences, the Raptors maintain many of the neurological and psychological traits inherited from Corax. The analytical mind, patient hunter's instinct, and preference for precision over brute force remain firmly embedded in their gene seed. These traits express themselves in the chapter's approach to warfare, though filtered through their unique experiences and adaptations. The Primarch's legacy is perhaps most evident in the Raptors' tactical acumen. Corvus Corax was known for his strategic brilliance and unconventional thinking, traits that allowed him to wage effective guerrilla warfare against overwhelming odds during the Lycius Uprising before the Emperor's arrival. Similarly, the Raptors excel at asymmetric warfare, though their methods differ from the Ravenguard in significant ways. The Ravenguard's combat doctrine centers on stealth, infiltration, and the exploitation of shadow. Their battle brothers move like wraiths through darkness, utilizing their Primarch's gift for near supernatural stealth. The chapter's organization includes specialized formations like the Shadow Masters and the Mordathan, the latter being those rare battle brothers who inherit Corax's ability to psychically mask their presence, becoming virtually invisible even in plain sight. The Raptors, by contrast, have developed a doctrine that emphasizes long-range reconnaissance, adaptive tactics, and precision firepower. While they value stealth, they do not rely on it exclusively. Their genetic modifications have enhanced their visual acuity at the expense of the preternatural stealth capabilities found in the Ravenguard. A Raptor's battle brother can spot a target at extreme distances and judge wind speed, atmospheric conditions, and trajectory calculations with remarkable accuracy, traits that have made them exceptional marksmen. Sergeant Cod Nolan, a veteran scout leader in the chapter's 10th Company, explained this distinction to his neophytes. The Ravenguard strike from shadows so deep the enemy never sees them coming. We strike from positions so distant the enemy never sees us at all. This divergence in tactical approach extends to the chapter's organizational structure. While both chapters maintain a nominal adherence to the Codex Astartes, the Ravenguard's companies often operate in specialized task forces called Talons, combining elements from different companies for specific missions. The Raptors maintain a more conventional company structure, but emphasize tactical flexibility within each squad. Their battle brothers are trained to fulfill multiple battlefield roles, allowing them to adapt to changing circumstances without requiring reinforcement. Among the other successors of the Ravenguard, the Raptors' approach is distinct but not unique. The Carcharoddans employ terror tactics and overwhelming assault, while the Blackguard favor close-quarters combat with a focus on decapitation strikes against enemy leadership. The Revilers, another 21st founding chapter believed to share Ravenguard lineage, operate with similar pragmatism to the Raptors, but lack their emphasis on marksmanship and reconnaissance. Perhaps the closest parallel to the Raptors' tactical philosophy can be found in the Reasonable Marines, a lesser-known Ravenguard successor that similarly prioritizes efficiency and practical solutions over glory or tradition. Both chapters have occasionally found themselves criticized by more zealous Astartes formations for their calculating approach to warfare, though such criticism rarely troubles either chapter. The reduced occurrence of the Ravenguard's melanchromatic skin mutation in the Raptors represents one of the few successful modifications achieved during the 21st founding. While the Mechanicus Genitors intended to eliminate what they perceived as a flaw, they instead reversed its expression, creating a new mutation that proved stable over generations of gene seed transmission. Magos Biology's Herrensvent's sealed records indicate that the Mechanicus team specifically targeted the melanochrome organ, one of the 19 gene seed organs implanted in space marine neophytes. This organ normally controls melanin production in response to radiation exposure, allowing space marines to survive in high radiation environments by darkening their skin. In the Ravenguard gene line, this organ typically overproduces melanin regardless of radiation levels, leading to the characteristic pale to sable skin transformation. The modifications made to the Raptor's melanochrome resulted in underproduction of melanin, making them more vulnerable to radiation and intense light, but otherwise causing no significant combat impairment. Chapter Apothecaries developed specialized treatments and equipment modifications to compensate for this vulnerability, including advanced auto lenses in their helmets and dermal radiation-resistant treatments applied during the final stages of gene seed implantation. What makes this mutation particularly notable is its stability. Unlike many 21st founding chapters whose genetic modifications led to cascading mutations and deterioration, the Raptor's altered melanochrome has remained consistent through thousands of implantation cycles. Apothecary Karis's records show minimal drift in expression over 20 generations of battle brothers, suggesting that whatever changes the Mechanicus made, they achieved a new equilibrium within the gene seed's complex biological systems. This stability stands in stark contrast to the experiences of other cursed founding chapters. The Blood Gorgons suffered progressive mutation that eventually drove them to heresy. The Sons of Antaeus developed abnormal bone and muscle density that, while providing enhanced durability, caused mounting organ failures in older battle brothers. The Flame Falcons manifested spontaneous immolation that led to their destruction by the Grey Knights after being declared mutants. The Raptor's relative genetic stability may be attributed to several factors. First, the modifications made to their gene seed were relatively targeted, focusing primarily on the melanochrome rather than attempting broad-spectrum alterations. Second, the chapter maintained rigorous gene seed monitoring protocols from its inception, allowing apothecaries to identify and cull any progenitor glands showing signs of instability. Third, some scholars have suggested that the Ravenguard gene line, having already survived the catastrophic experiments of Corax during the Horus Heresy, possessed inherent resilience to certain forms of genetic manipulation. Inquisitor Herodotus Thrain of the Ordo Hereticus, who conducted an investigation into the 21st founding in the late 38th millennium, noted this phenomenon in his classified report. The Raptors present a curious case of limited success amidst widespread failure. Their deviation from the Ravenguard template is pronounced yet stable. One might hypothesize that the Mechanicus Genitors inadvertently achieved a new equilibrium state rather than creating an ongoing instability. The question remains whether this was by design or fortunate accident. The maintenance of gene seed purity, despite the issues common to the 21st founding, has been a point of pride and vigilance for the Raptors. Their apothecarian maintains more extensive genetic monitoring facilities than those found in most chapters, with specialized equipment designed to detect subtle changes in gene seed expression. Every progenitor gland harvested from a fallen battle brother undergoes comprehensive analysis before being cleared for implantation in a new neophyte. This caution extends to recruitment practices. Unlike some chapters that draw aspirants from a single world, the Raptors cast a wider net, selecting candidates from multiple planets within their operational sphere. This diversity in the recruitment pool helps maintain genetic variability, potentially offsetting any latent instabilities in their gene seed. aspirants undergo more extensive genetic screening than is typical in other chapters, with particular attention paid to melanin production and radiation tolerance. The chapter's fortress monastery includes a sealed vault known as the Genitorium, where samples of gene seed from each generation of battle brothers are preserved in stasis. This archive allows apothecaries to track subtle changes over time and provides a baseline against which to measure current gene seed samples. Should signs of degradation or mutation appear, the chapter has contingency protocols to revert to earlier, more stable samples. Despite these precautions, the Raptors have not been entirely free from the stigma attached to the 21st founding. Other chapters, particularly those of more ancient lineage, sometimes view them with suspicion. The Ultramarines and their successors, with their emphasis on genetic purity, have been known to keep the Raptors at arm's length in joint operations. The Dark Angels, already secretive by nature, are particularly reluctant to share battlefield information with a chapter whose origins they consider questionable. The Ravenguard's relationship with the Raptors is complex. As genetic kin, there exists a natural affinity between the two chapters. However, the Ravenguard's own history with genetic manipulation, specifically Corax's failed attempts to rapidly rebuild his legion using accelerated gene seed techniques during the Horus Heresy, has left them wary of any tampering with the Emperor's original designs. While they acknowledge the Raptors as cousins, there remains a certain distance, a hesitation to fully embrace a chapter born of genetic experimentation. This complex heritage has shaped the Raptors' culture in subtle ways. They maintain fewer rituals and traditions than most chapters, focusing instead on practical results and adaptability. Their fortress monastery lacks the grand shrines and memorial halls common to older chapters, featuring instead extensive training facilities, tactical simulation chambers, and one of the most comprehensive battlefield data archives outside of the Ultramarines' libraries on Muck Crag. The chapter's approach to the Emperor reflects this pragmatism. While they venerate him as the creator of the Astartes and the master of mankind, their worship lacks the zealotry found in more devotional chapters. They honor the Emperor through effective service rather than elaborate ceremony, believing that victory in his name is the highest form of worship. The Raptors' approach to warfare stands in stark contrast to many of their fellow Adeptus Astartes chapters. Where others might seek glory in heroic last stands or valorous charges, the Raptors consistently prioritize tactical efficiency and mission success above all else. This pragmatism permeates every aspect of their combat doctrine, from strategic planning to battlefield execution, creating a chapter that values results over recognition. At the core of the Raptors' tactical philosophy lies a fundamental commitment to flexibility. Unlike chapters that adhere rigidly to prescribed combat doctrines, the Raptors maintain that adaptability is the supreme virtue in warfare. Their battle brothers are trained to assess each engagement on its own merits, analyzing terrain, enemy composition, available resources, and strategic objectives before determining the optimal approach. This flexibility extends to equipment loadouts, with Raptors squads frequently customizing their wargear based on mission parameters rather than traditional squad designations. Captain Laius Isadin, one of the chapter's most renowned commanders, exemplified this approach during the Badab War. When tasked with eliminating a heavily fortified secessionist position on Signax, Isadin eschewed the frontal assault favored by the Fire Hawks and Star Phantoms. Instead, he deployed infiltration teams to identify structural weaknesses in the enemy fortifications, followed by precision strikes from Vindicator siege tanks at the exact points where they would cause maximum damage with minimal ammunition expenditure. The position fell within hours, with Raptors' casualties at less than 1/5 of what projections indicated a direct assault would have cost. The chapter's armory reflects this practical mindset. Raptors' artificers modify standard equipment for optimal field performance rather than aesthetic appeal. Their bolters feature extended barrels for improved accuracy, noise suppressors for covert operations, and customized ammunition feeds to reduce jam rates. Their power armor often incorporates additional sensory equipment, enhanced camouflage systems, and reinforced joint servos to improve mobility in difficult terrain. These modifications sacrifice the ornate appearance valued by many chapters in favor of battlefield utility. Sergeant Torian Keeds of the 3rd Company demonstrated the value of this approach during the Damocles Gulf campaign. When his squad's Rhino transport was disabled by Tau fire, Keeds salvaged the vehicle's Auspex array and integrated it into his armor systems. This field modification extended his squad's detection range by 37%, allowing them to track Tau Pathfinder movements and eliminate 3 scout teams before they could report Imperial positions. Such improvisation is not merely permitted within the Raptors, it is actively encouraged. The chapter places exceptional emphasis on reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. While all Space Marine formations recognize the value of information, the Raptors elevate it to an art form. Each company maintains dedicated reconnaissance squads equipped with specialized Auspex equipment, long-range Vox systems, and optical augmentation devices. These squads often deploy days or even weeks ahead of main forces, establishing comprehensive intelligence networks and mapping enemy positions with meticulous precision. The Raptors' 10th Company Scouts undergo additional training beyond the standard Space Marine Scout curriculum. Beyond stealth and survival, they learn advanced data analysis, enemy pattern recognition, and psychological assessment techniques. A Raptors Scout is expected not merely to observe enemy movements, but to understand them, to discern the intent behind deployments, to identify command structures, and to predict future actions based on observed behaviors. This emphasis on intelligence extends to the chapter's approach to alien foes. The Raptors maintain extensive xenological databases documenting the tactical tendencies of various Xeno species. Battle brothers facing a particular alien threat for the first time are provided with detailed briefings on expected behaviors, physiological weaknesses, and optimal engagement strategies. This knowledge-based approach stands in contrast to the reflexive xenophobia that characterizes many chapters, where hatred of the alien sometimes overrides tactical consideration. During the Tyranid incursions in the Jericho Reach, the Raptors deployed specialized hunter-killer teams equipped with modified weapons specifically designed to target Tyranid synapse creatures. These teams operated independently, using their extensive knowledge of Tyranid behavior patterns to predict where synapse nodes would appear and eliminating them before they could establish psychic control over the lesser organisms. This approach proved so effective that elements of the Deathwatch later incorporated aspects of it into their own anti-Tyranid protocols. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the Raptors' combat doctrine is their willingness to withdraw from engagements when tactical analysis indicates that continued fighting would be counterproductive. In a culture where many chapters view retreat as dishonorable regardless of circumstances, the Raptors' pragmatic approach to battlefield disengagement has sometimes been misinterpreted as cowardice by less nuanced observers. The reality, however, is far different. The Raptors do not retreat from fear, but from calculation. When ammunition runs low, when casualties mount beyond sustainable levels, or when objectives become unattainable, they recognize that preserving their forces for future operations serves the Emperor better than a glorious last stand. This perspective is codified in the chapter's combat manuals, which explicitly state that a battle brother who dies unnecessarily has failed the chapter as surely as one who flees in cowardice. This philosophy was demonstrated during the defense of Hive Tartarus against the Chaos Warband, known as the Purge. When toxic gas attacks rendered the upper Hive levels indefensible, Captain Salak ordered a fighting withdrawal to predetermined defensive positions in the mid-Hive rather than holding ground at any cost. This decision allowed the Raptors to preserve their strength while channeling enemy forces into prepared killing zones. The subsequent counterattack reclaimed the upper Hive with minimal casualties, whereas maintaining the original positions would likely have resulted in the annihilation of the defending forces. The Raptors' combat doctrine places unusual emphasis on fire discipline and marksmanship. While all Space Marines are trained marksmen, the Raptors elevate precision shooting to a central tenet of their approach to warfare. Chapter training protocols require battle brothers to maintain accuracy standards 30% higher than those mandated by the Codex Astartes. Specialized firing ranges within their fortress monastery simulate combat conditions ranging from zero-gravity environments to extreme weather, ensuring that Raptors can maintain their marksmanship under any circumstances. This focus on precision shooting influences their tactical preferences. Raptors squads typically engage at longer ranges than other chapters, using superior firepower to eliminate threats before close combat becomes necessary. When melee is unavoidable, they approach it with the same clinical efficiency, focusing on rapid target elimination rather than protracted duels. A Raptor's assault squad does not charge for glory, but strikes with calculated violence at critical vulnerabilities, often withdrawing immediately after achieving their objective rather than becoming bogged down in extended combat. The chapter's preference for stealth and surprise further reflects their practical mindset. Raptors' operations frequently begin with infiltration teams who disable enemy communications, eliminate sentries, and create openings for the main force. These teams operate under strict noise and light discipline, using suppressed weapons and night vision equipment to maintain operational security. Unlike the theatrical terror tactics employed by chapters like the Night Lords or Karkaroddans, the Raptors' stealth operations prioritize efficiency over psychological impact. Communication within the chapter follows similarly practical lines. The Raptors utilize a modified battle cant that emphasizes information density and clarity over ritual or tradition. Their Vox protocols eliminate unnecessary acknowledgments and formalities, reducing transmission time and minimizing the risk of interception. Battle Brothers are trained to convey complex tactical information using abbreviated code phrases that would be unintelligible to outsiders, but communicate precise instructions to fellow Raptors. This efficiency extends to their command structure. While maintaining nominal compliance with the Codex Astartes, the Raptors implement a flexible chain of command that allows for rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. Field officers are granted significant autonomy, authorized to modify mission parameters when conditions warrant without seeking approval from higher echelons. This decentralized approach enables the chapter to respond quickly to battlefield developments while maintaining strategic coherence. The chapter's approach to wargear maintenance further demonstrates their practical mindset. Raptors' tech marines prioritize functionality over form, willingly sacrificing traditional design elements if doing so improves field performance. Their vehicles often feature additional armor at vulnerable points, modified engine housings for improved terrain handling, and customized weapon mounts to increase firing arcs. These modifications might lack the aesthetic appeal valued by more tradition-bound chapters, but they measurably enhance combat effectiveness. Despite their reputation for cold calculation, the Raptors' approach to warfare is not without an underlying philosophy. They view war not as a path to glory, but as a solemn duty, a task to be executed with maximum efficiency and minimum waste. In their perspective, the Emperor is best served not by heroic sacrifices, but by consistent victory achieved through intelligence, adaptability, and precision. Every drop of Astartes' blood has strategic value. To spill it unnecessarily is not heroism but failure. This philosophy influences their approach to civilian populations in war zones. Unlike chapters that view mortal humans as irrelevant to their operations, the Raptors recognize that civilian populations represent both strategic assets and potential intelligence sources. Their operations typically include provisions for civilian evacuation when practical, not from sentimental compassion, but from the pragmatic recognition that civilian casualties create strategic complications and waste potentially useful human resources. During the Lycanthos Drift campaign, Raptors forces systematically evacuated mining communities ahead of their advance, both to prevent civilian casualties and to deny the enemy the opportunity to use human shields. These evacuees later provided valuable intelligence on enemy movements and local terrain features that conventional Auspex scans had missed. This approach not only preserved Imperial lives, but measurably contributed to the campaign's successful conclusion. The Raptors chapter's visual aesthetic stands as one of the most distinctive and pragmatic among the Adeptus Astartes. where many chapters adorn their armor with ornate decorations, religious iconography, and elaborate heraldry, the Raptors employ a utilitarian approach that prioritizes battlefield effectiveness over ceremonial display. Their appearance, like every other aspect of their chapter culture, reflects their fundamental commitment to practical warfare. The most immediately recognizable feature of Raptor's armor is its distinctive green coloration. Unlike the deep emerald of the Dark Angels or the vibrant jade of the Sons of Medusa, the Raptors employ a muted olive-drab base color specifically selected for its camouflage properties. This particular shade of green was developed by chapter artificers through extensive field testing in various environments, offering optimal concealment in wooded and jungle terrain while still providing reasonable camouflage value in urban and mountainous settings. This base color serves as the foundation for an elaborate camouflage system that varies depending on operational environment. Raptor's battle brothers regularly modify their armor coloration before deployment, applying specialized pigments that can be easily applied and removed without damaging the ceramite. For desert operations, they overlay their green base with patterns of tan and ochre. In urban environments, they incorporate gray and charcoal elements. For winter warfare, their armor receives patterns of white and pale blue. These camouflage schemes extend to their vehicles and equipment, creating a unified visual profile that minimizes detection. Apothecary Torvis, who served with the Death Watch for 2 decades before returning to the chapter, noted in his field journals, "The Raptors' approach to armor decoration bewilders battle brothers from more traditional chapters. A blood angel cannot comprehend why we would obscure our chapter colors beneath temporary pigments, viewing it almost as a form of dishonor. They fail to understand that our chapter badge remains visible, while the camouflage serves a vital tactical purpose. We honor the Emperor through survival and victory, not through making ourselves convenient targets." The application of these camouflage patterns follows standardized templates developed by the chapter's Techmarine Corps, with variations approved for specific environmental conditions. Each company maintains dedicated equipment for rapid application of appropriate patterns, allowing battle brothers to adjust their appearance within hours of receiving deployment orders. This system ensures visual consistency across squads while maximizing environmental adaptation. Beneath these practical considerations lies a deeper significance to the Raptors' green livery. The color connects them symbolically to their progenitor chapter, the Ravenguard, whose pre-heresy colors included dark green before adopting their current black. By maintaining this link to earlier Ravenguard traditions, the Raptors acknowledge their heritage while establishing their distinct identity. The specific shade also evokes the dense forests of their original homeworld, Badab Primaris, representing an environmental adaptation that became central to their chapter culture. The chapter's iconography centers on their namesake, the raptor. Their primary badge depicts a stylized bird of prey skull, typically rendered in bone white against the green background of their left shoulder pauldron. This skull is anatomically distinct from the aquiline imagery favored by many Imperial organizations, featuring the hooked beak and predatory features of raptorial birds. The skull, rather than a living raptor, emphasizes the chapter's focus on lethality and the inevitable death that awaits their enemies. This primary iconography remains remarkably consistent across all chapter elements, with minimal variation between companies or specialized formations. Where many chapters employ elaborate systems of heraldic differences, the Raptors maintain visual uniformity to enhance battlefield coordination and reduce the intelligence value of identifying markings. An enemy who captures a single Raptor's helmet gains little insight into the chapter's organizational structure or deployment patterns. Company designations appear as small numeric markings typically placed on the right greave or knee pad, rendered in a muted off-white that blends with their camouflage patterns. These numerals use a simplified angular font designed for clarity at short distances while remaining difficult to discern from afar. Squad markings follow a similar principle, appearing as small geometric symbols on the right shoulder pauldron that indicate tactical role rather than arbitrary squad designations. Veteran status receives acknowledgement through subtle modifications rather than dramatic visual distinctions. The most experienced battle brothers often display a slightly darker shade of green on their helmet crests or shoulder trim, a difference noticeable to fellow Raptors, but easily missed by outside observers. This understated approach to veterancy recognition reflects the chapter's emphasis on collective effectiveness over individual glory. Sergeant Kalen Torix of the 5th Company explained this philosophy to newly promoted squad leaders. Your rank exists to serve the mission, not to elevate your status. The markings of your position should be visible enough for your battle brothers to recognize your authority in combat conditions, but not so prominent as to make you a priority target for enemy snipers. Remember that many Xeno species specifically target command elements when they can identify them. Specialized roles within the chapter receive functional rather than ceremonial distinctions. Apothecaries incorporate the standard white helmet, but typically apply camouflage patterns that break up its silhouette, reducing its visibility while maintaining recognition by wounded battle brothers. Techmarines similarly modify the traditional red of their station with camouflage overlays, though they retain the Mechanicus Cog insignia as a matter of respect for Mars. Chaplains maintain their black helmets, but often apply non-reflective finishes to reduce light signature during night operations. The chapter's officers present an interesting study in restrained heraldry. Unlike the elaborate artificer armor and distinctive helmet plumes common among many chapters' leadership, Raptors' officers maintain a visual profile nearly identical to their battle brothers. The primary distinction lies in subtle gold or bronze edging on their shoulder pauldrons, visible primarily at close range. This approach reflects both tactical considerations, making officers less obvious targets, and the chapter's cultural emphasis on functional leadership over ceremonial authority. Chapter Master Laius Isadin, perhaps the most renowned leader in the chapter's history, exemplified this approach. His wargear, while masterfully crafted, featured minimal decorative elements beyond functional enhancements. The few embellishments he permitted were rendered in muted tones that harmonized with his armor's camouflage patterns. Even his artificer bolt rifle, a masterpiece of Techmarine craftsmanship, maintained an understated appearance that belied its exceptional performance characteristics. Honor markings within the chapter follow a similarly practical approach. Rather than the elaborate honor scrolls, purity seals, and devotional scripts favored by many chapters, the Raptors acknowledge battlefield achievements through small kill markings and campaign symbols applied to their armor in locations that don't compromise camouflage effectiveness. These markings typically appear on the inside surfaces of shoulder pauldrons or on ammunition pouches, visible to the battle brother and his immediate comrades, but not to distant observers. The chapter maintains a formalized system for these honor markings, with specific symbols denoting different types of engagements. A small stylized lightning bolt might indicate participation in a rapid strike operation, while a mountain silhouette represents actions in high-altitude environments. These markings create a visual record of a battle brother's operational history without compromising tactical considerations or indulging in vanity. Equipment modifications represent perhaps the most distinctive aspect of the Raptors' appearance. Their weapons and armor undergo extensive customization focused on practical battlefield performance. Standard issue bolters receive additional stabilizing components, enhanced targeting systems, and modified ammunition feeds that improve reliability in adverse conditions. These modifications often alter the weapon's silhouettes, creating a distinctive profile that identifies Raptors' equipment even when separated from its bearer. Their power armor undergoes similarly extensive adaptation. Noise reduction systems line joint servos, eliminating the characteristic Space Marine heavy footfall during stealth operations. External armor plates receive additional attachment points for environmental camouflage materials. Helmet autosenses incorporate enhanced magnification and spectrum filters that compensate for the chapter's geneseed-related light sensitivity while providing superior threat detection capabilities. These modifications extend to the chapter's vehicles as well. Raptor's Rhino transports feature additional external stowage for camouflage netting and equipment, modified exhaust systems that reduce thermal signatures, and reinforced suspension components for improved off-road mobility. Land speeders incorporate specialized sensor arrays and sound dampening technology that allow them to function as reconnaissance platforms more effectively than their standard configurations permit. The practical nature of these modifications often results in a visual aesthetic that some chapters might consider ungainly or inelegant. A Raptors squad typically presents a less uniform appearance than their counterparts from more tradition-bound chapters, with individual battle brothers modifying their equipment based on personal experience and operational requirements. This visual diversity reflects the chapter's emphasis on adaptability and individual initiative within the framework of collective discipline. Techmarine Vortigern, who oversees much of the chapter's equipment modification, addressed this perception in a rare communication with a visiting Ultramarines armorer. We understand that our approach may appear haphazard to outsiders, but every modification serves a specific purpose, validated through field testing and combat data. The additional ablative plating on our transport's forward glacis increases survivability against anti-armor weapons by 23%. The modified targeting cogitators in our Predator turrets improve first-round hit probability by 17% in adverse weather conditions. These improvements justify any perceived lack of aesthetic cohesion. The chapter's serfs and support personnel maintain a similarly practical appearance. Where many chapters dress their human auxiliaries in elaborate livery, displaying their heraldic colors and iconography, Raptors serfs wear functional attire in muted greens and browns that echo their master's camouflage patterns without directly mimicking Astartes' imagery. This approach reflects both security considerations, making chapter facilities less visually distinctive to orbital observation, and cultural values that prioritize function over ceremonial display. The Raptors' approach to formal occasions and interactions with other Imperial organizations reveals the limited circumstances under which they set aside their practical considerations. During diplomatic engagements or ceremonial functions, the chapter will sometimes display more traditional heraldry, with battle brothers removing camouflage overlays to reveal their base green livery and polishing their Raptor skull insignia to a bright white finish. Even in these situations, however, they maintain a more restrained appearance than many of their cousin chapters. When serving alongside other Imperial forces, the Raptors make tactical adjustments to their appearance to facilitate coordination. They will adopt standardized markings on their armor to identify them to allied forces, typically applying these identifiers in locations that maintain their camouflage effectiveness while providing necessary recognition elements. These accommodations represent one of the few circumstances under which the chapter willingly modifies their appearance for non-tactical purposes. The chapter's scout elements deserve special mention for their distinctive approach to camouflage and equipment. Raptors scouts receive more extensive training in environmental adaptation than those of most chapters, learning to modify their appearance using both technological means and natural materials. Their carapace armor incorporates specialized attachment points for vegetation, fabric overlays, and other camouflage elements specific to their operational environment. The Raptors maintain a structure that adheres to the core tenets of the Codex Astartes, while implementing practical adaptations suited to their operational philosophy. Their organization into 10 companies follows Robute Guilliman's prescribed pattern, though the internal composition and deployment of these companies reflects the chapter's emphasis on tactical flexibility and mission-specific customization. The first company, as tradition dictates, houses the chapter's veterans. These battle brothers have proven themselves through decades of service, demonstrating not just combat prowess, but the tactical acumen and adaptability that the Raptors prize above all else. Unlike many chapters that outfit their veterans exclusively in Terminator armor or with specialized close combat weapons, the Raptors' first company maintains a diverse arsenal tailored to multiple combat roles. A veteran squad might deploy with a mix of Stalker pattern bolters for long-range precision fire, standard Godwin pattern bolters for medium engagement distances, and a limited number of close combat specialists to address any threats that breach their firing perimeter. The armor of First Company veterans bears subtle distinctions from that of their battle brothers in other companies. Small bone white raptor skull markings appear on their knee pads, and their shoulder trim features a slightly darker shade of green that appears almost black in certain lighting conditions. These veterans operate less as a single deployable company and more as a resource pool from which specialized task forces are drawn for particularly challenging operations. Companies 2 through 5 form the chapter's battle companies, each maintaining a balanced mix of tactical, assault, and devastator squads. The Raptors diverge from strict codex organization by adjusting the proportions of these squad types based on operational needs rather than maintaining fixed ratios. The 3rd Company, for instance, currently fields 7 tactical squads, 1 assault squad, and 2 devastator squads, reflecting its recent deployment patterns in urban pacification operations, where the flexibility of tactical squads proved particularly valuable. Each battle company maintains dedicated reconnaissance elements beyond those prescribed by the Codex. These 2-man teams operate independently from standard squad structures, often deploying days or weeks ahead of main forces to gather intelligence and establish observation posts. Equipped with specialized Auspex units, long-range Vox communicators, and limited signature power systems for their armor, these reconnaissance specialists provide the tactical intelligence that forms the foundation of the Raptors' precision operations. The 6th and 7th Companies serve as the chapter's designated tactical reserves, while the 8th and 9th fulfill the assault and devastator reserve roles respectively. However, the Raptors implement a rotational training system that ensures battle brothers in these companies maintain proficiency across multiple combat disciplines. A devastator specialist from 9th Company might temporarily transfer to the 8th to maintain close combat skills, while assault marines occasionally train with heavy weapons to understand their capabilities and limitations. The 10th Company houses the chapter's scout marines, though their training regimen extends significantly beyond Codex standards. Raptors neophytes spend an average of 15 years in scout status compared to the typical 10, undergoing additional instruction in fieldcraft, environmental adaptation, and independent operation. This extended training period produces scout marines capable of operating with minimal supervision for extended durations, often conducting reconnaissance missions that would require full battle brothers in other chapters. Beyond the standard company structure, the Raptors maintain several specialized formations that address their particular tactical needs. The Talon teams represent perhaps the most distinctive of these units. Comprising 5 battle brothers drawn from across the chapter's companies, these teams specialize in deep reconnaissance and precision elimination of high-value targets. Each Talon team includes a designated marksman equipped with a stalker pattern bolter or sniper rifle, a communications specialist with enhanced Vox equipment, a heavy weapons operator typically carrying a missile launcher with specialized warheads, a close combat specialist for perimeter security, and a team leader with advanced tactical analysis training. Talon teams operate with considerable autonomy, often deploying independently of larger chapter forces to conduct operations requiring surgical precision rather than overwhelming force. During the Badab War, Talon teams infiltrated deep behind secessionist lines to eliminate key command personnel and sabotage critical infrastructure, degrading enemy capabilities before larger Imperial forces engaged. The effectiveness of these small units has led several other chapters with Ravenguard lineage to adopt similar operational structures. The Shadow Talons represent another specialized formation within the chapter. Unlike the small, self-contained Talon teams, the Shadow Talons function as a rapid reaction force comprised of elements drawn from multiple companies. Typically centered around a core of assault marines equipped with jump packs, augmented by land speeders and occasionally Storm Talon gunships, this formation specializes in exploiting vulnerabilities identified by reconnaissance elements. Shadow Talons deploy with minimal warning, striking targets of opportunity and withdrawing before enemy forces can organize an effective response. The chapter's command structure maintains nominal compliance with codex organization while implementing practical adaptations. The chapter master serves as the ultimate authority, supported by a command staff including the Master of Sanctity, Master of the Forge, and Chief Apothecary. Company captains report directly to the chapter master, but maintain considerable operational autonomy, particularly during extended deployments where regular communication with chapter command might prove impractical. Chapter Master Lias Isadin, who led the Raptors through some of their most challenging campaigns, including the Badab War, exemplified the chapter's approach to leadership. Rather than issuing detailed directives to his captains, Isadin provided clear strategic objectives and allowed his officers to determine the tactical approaches best suited to achieving them. This decentralized command philosophy enabled the chapter to operate effectively across multiple war zones simultaneously, with each detachment adapting to local conditions without requiring constant guidance from higher echelons. The chapter's librarius deserves particular mention for its distinctive approach to psychic warfare. Raptors librarians emphasize divination and precognitive abilities that enhance the chapter's intelligence-gathering capabilities. Rather than focusing on destructive psychic powers or dramatic battlefield effects, they specialize in detecting enemy movements, identifying concealed threats, and analyzing probability matrices to determine optimal engagement strategies. This approach complements the chapter's emphasis on preparation and precision, providing tactical intelligence that conventional reconnaissance cannot obtain. Recruitment for the Raptors follows a distributed model rather than drawing aspirants from a single homeworld. After the destruction of their original fortress monastery on Badab Primaris during the Badab War, the chapter established recruitment operations across multiple worlds in the Carthene sector. This approach serves both practical and genetic purposes, ensuring a steady supply of candidates while maintaining genetic diversity that helps mitigate the chapter's gene seed peculiarities. The selection process emphasizes mental acuity and adaptability alongside the physical requirements common to all Astartes recruitment. Potential aspirants undergo extensive psychological evaluation to identify those with the analytical mindset and pragmatic outlook that align with the chapter's combat philosophy. Tests include complex tactical simulations, environmental survival challenges, and problem-solving scenarios designed to identify candidates who prioritize mission success over personal glory. Once selected, aspirants enter a training regimen that extends considerably beyond standard codex practices. The initial phase focuses on basic physical conditioning and combat skills, but quickly expands to include specialized instruction in reconnaissance techniques, environmental adaptation, and tactical analysis. Aspirants learn to process battlefield information methodically, identifying key variables, and developing appropriate responses based on available resources rather than predetermined doctrines. The implantation of gene seed occurs gradually throughout this training period, with apothecaries monitoring each neophyte closely for signs of adverse reaction. The chapter's gene seed quirks, particularly the reduced melanin production that results in their characteristic pale complexion, receive special attention, with additional treatments administered to mitigate the associated light sensitivity. Neophytes who display particularly severe manifestations of these traits undergo additional modifications to their equipment, particularly enhanced auto senses in their helmets to compensate for visual limitations. Upon completion of their implantation and initial training, neophytes transfer to the 10th Company as Scout Marines. Here they enter a structured progression through increasingly complex operational roles, beginning with basic reconnaissance missions under direct supervision and eventually advancing to independent operations. Scout sergeants maintain detailed performance records for each neophyte, documenting not just combat effectiveness, but decision-making processes and tactical adaptability. The final stage of a neophyte's training involves integration with full battle companies through attachment to tactical squads. These temporary assignments allow experienced battle brothers to evaluate the neophyte's readiness for full Astartes status while providing practical experience in coordinated operations. Only after demonstrating proficiency in both independent action and team coordination does a neophyte receive their final geneseed implants and full power armor, graduating to Battle Brother status. The chapter's approach to equipment distribution further reflects their practical mindset. Rather than assigning wargear based solely on squad designation or company tradition, the Raptors allocate equipment based on mission requirements and individual proficiency. A Battle Brother who demonstrates exceptional skill with a particular weapon system might receive access to that equipment regardless of his formal squad role, creating flexible fire teams optimized for specific operational parameters. This pragmatic approach extends to the chapter's vehicle pool. The Raptors maintain a diverse array of transport and support vehicles, from standard Rhino transports and Predator tanks to more specialized land speeders and Storm Talon gunships. Unlike chapters that assign vehicles permanently to specific companies, the Raptors operate a centralized motor pool from which assets are drawn based on mission requirements. This system ensures maximum utilization of limited resources while allowing for mission-specific customization of transport elements. The chapter's Techmarine Corps plays a crucial role in maintaining this flexible approach to equipment. Beyond their standard responsibilities for vehicle maintenance and weapons repair, Raptors Techmarines specialize in field modifications that adapt standard equipment to specific operational environments. They have developed a comprehensive database of approved modifications for different combat scenarios, allowing rapid customization of equipment as deployment parameters change. These modifications range from simple camouflage applications to more complex alterations like sound suppression systems for weapons or enhanced filtration units for operations in toxic environments. The Apothecarian maintains similarly specialized capabilities focused on the chapter's unique needs. Beyond standard medical functions and geneseed collection, Raptors apothecaries develop treatments for the environmental vulnerabilities created by their geneseed's reduced melanin production. These include dermal protective compounds for operations on high radiation worlds and ocular enhancement procedures that improve visual acuity in bright conditions. The Apothecarian also maintains more extensive genetic monitoring facilities than found in many chapters, reflecting their vigilance regarding the stability of their 21st founding geneseed. The chaplaincy of the Raptors takes a distinctive approach to maintaining the chapter's spiritual and psychological health. While they preserve the core Imperial creed and veneration of the Emperor, Raptors chaplains emphasize practical virtues over zealous devotion. Their sermons focus on adaptability, precision, and tactical awareness as expressions of faith rather than martyrdom or unthinking sacrifice. This approach produces battle brothers who fight with calculated determination rather than religious fervor, making decisions based on tactical reality rather than emotional impulse. The Badab War stands as one of the most significant conflicts in the Raptors' history, testing not only their combat prowess but their fundamental loyalty to the Imperium. When Luft Huron, chapter master of the Astral Claws, declared the Badab sector independent from Imperial authority in the year 901 of the 41st millennium, the Raptors found themselves in a precarious position. Their fortress monastery on Badab Primaris placed them directly within Huron's sphere of influence, yet their pragmatic nature and unwavering loyalty to the Emperor prevented them from joining the secessionist cause. Chapter Master Laius Isadin made the difficult decision to evacuate their primary fortress monastery rather than commit to Huron's rebellion. This tactical withdrawal, executed with characteristic precision, preserved the chapter's strength while demonstrating their allegiance to Terra. The Raptors redeployed to the Carthene sector, establishing temporary command facilities aboard their battle barges while preparing to enter the conflict on the Loyalist side. The Raptors' first major engagement during the Badab War came during the Sagan campaign in 906. Imperial forces had become bogged down in brutal urban warfare against entrenched secessionist elements from the Executioners and Astral Claws. Rather than commit to the grinding attrition that had already claimed thousands of lives, Isadin deployed his forces in a series of precision strikes against secessionist command and control nodes. Raptors' Talon teams infiltrated deep behind enemy lines, eliminating key officers and destroying communications infrastructure with surgical precision. One particularly notable operation saw a 5-man Talon team led by Sergeant Salak penetrate the heavily defended Trader's Redoubt, neutralizing an Astral Claws captain and his command squad before extracting without casualties. These operations severely degraded the secessionists' ability to coordinate their defense, creating vulnerabilities that larger loyalist forces could exploit. The chapter's most decisive contribution came during the Battle of Murathir. The secessionists had established a formidable defensive line anchored by 3 fortified bastions, each protected by void shields and interlocking fields of fire. Previous frontal assaults by Fire Hawks and Marines' errant forces had been repulsed with heavy casualties, leading Imperial commanders to consider orbital bombardment despite the civilian population in the area. Isadin proposed an alternative approach. Using detailed topographical data gathered by scout infiltrators, the Raptors identified a narrow ravine system that provided a concealed approach to the central bastion's power generation facility. A strike force comprising elements of the 1st and 3rd Companies navigated this treacherous terrain under cover of darkness, avoiding secessionist patrols through careful movement and disciplined light and noise control. Upon reaching the power facility, the Raptors deployed specialized melta charges at structural weak points identified through prior analysis. The resulting explosion disabled the void shields protecting all 3 bastions, creating a momentary vulnerability that waiting loyalist forces immediately exploited. Firehawk's Thunderhawk gunships launched a coordinated strike against the now exposed defensive positions, while Marines' errant assault teams breached the perimeter defenses. The entire secessionist line collapsed within 6 hours, with minimal civilian casualties and significantly reduced loyalist losses compared to previous engagements. This operation exemplified the Raptors' approach to warfare: thorough intelligence gathering, careful planning, precise execution, and coordination with allied forces to maximize effectiveness. Their contributions earned commendation from Lord High Commander Karab Kuln, who noted that the chapter had achieved through precision what could not be accomplished through brute force. The conclusion of the Badab War saw the Raptors granted rights to recruit from several worlds in the Carthene sector as compensation for the loss of their original fortress monastery. Though their participation had been costly, nearly 200 battle brothers fell during the conflict. The chapter emerged with its reputation enhanced and its loyalty to the Imperium firmly established. The Taros campaign against the Tau Empire in the year 998 of the 41st millennium presented the Raptors with a different set of challenges. Deployed alongside elements of the Astra Militarum and several other Space Marine chapters, they faced an enemy whose technological advantages and mobility-focused tactics rendered traditional Imperial approaches ineffective. The arid desert environment of Taros, with its vast open spaces and limited cover, initially seemed ill-suited to the Raptors' preference for concealment and ambush. Adapting to these conditions, the Raptors modified their standard camouflage patterns to match the desert terrain and adjusted their tactical approach to emphasize long-range engagement. Their Devastator squads equipped with missile launchers and las cannons proved particularly effective against Tau armor, while scout snipers targeted Tau command personnel with precision fire from concealed positions. Captain Orleus, commanding the Raptors' contingent on Taros, recognized early that conventional engagement with the highly mobile Tau forces would prove counterproductive. Instead, he implemented a strategy focused on denying the Tau their preferred battlefield conditions. Raptors' forces conducted night raids against Tau supply lines and communications infrastructure, forcing the enemy to divert resources to rear area security rather than frontline operations. A particularly effective tactic involved targeting the Tau's water purification facilities. The desert environment made these installations critical to Tau operations, and their destruction forced enemy forces to either withdraw to secondary positions or operate at reduced effectiveness due to water rationing. The Raptors' understanding of battlefield logistics allowed them to identify and exploit this vulnerability, where other Imperial forces had focused solely on engaging enemy combat units. Despite these tactical successes, the overall Taros campaign ended in withdrawal for Imperial forces. The Raptors were among the last units to leave the planet, covering the evacuation of Astra Militarum elements while under heavy pressure from advancing Tau forces. Their disciplined fighting retreat preserved thousands of Imperial lives that might otherwise have been lost, turning what could have been a rout into an orderly strategic withdrawal. The campaign highlighted both the Raptors' strengths and limitations. Their adaptive tactics and precision operations proved effective at the small unit level, but the chapter's limited numbers prevented them from influencing the broader strategic situation against the numerically superior Tau. Nevertheless, their performance was noted by Imperial Command, with Lord General Mordaunt specifically commending their exceptional battlefield discipline and tactical acumen under adverse conditions. The Damocles Gulf Crusade provided another opportunity for the Raptors to face the Tau Empire, this time as part of a larger Imperial effort to check Tau expansion into Imperial space. The chapter contributed 3 companies to this massive operation, operating primarily in the vanguard of Imperial advances to gather intelligence on Tau defensive positions and identify vulnerabilities for exploitation by larger forces. On the world of Silkel, Raptors' reconnaissance elements discovered a pattern to the Tau defensive deployments that revealed a critical weakness. The Tau had established their fire-based network in locations that optimized fire lanes and sensor coverage, but left them dependent on a limited number of supply routes through the planet's mountainous terrain. By identifying and targeting these choke points, the Raptors enabled Imperial forces to isolate and neutralize Tau defensive positions without engaging their full firepower. The chapter also demonstrated their versatility during void operations around the Daleth system. Elements of the First Company, equipped with Terminator armor, participated in boarding actions against Tau spacecraft. Despite limited experience with this type of warfare, the Raptors adapted their tactics to the confined environment of Tau vessels, using their analytical approach to identify critical systems for targeting. Their after-action reports on Tau's ship layouts and defensive protocols proved valuable to later Imperial operations throughout the campaign. As the Crusade progressed, the Raptors found themselves increasingly engaged in ground operations on Daleth itself. The heavily populated Tau Sept world presented a complex urban battlefield where distinction between military and civilian targets became problematic. Here, the chapter's emphasis on precision targeting proved particularly valuable, allowing them to neutralize Tau military assets while minimizing collateral damage that might have strengthened Tau propaganda efforts. The unexpected arrival of Hive Fleet Behemoth forced an abrupt end to the Damocles Gulf Crusade, with Imperial forces withdrawing to meet this greater threat. The Raptors' Third Company remained engaged with Tau forces on Daleth during this withdrawal, conducting a fighting retreat that inflicted disproportionate casualties on pursuing forces. Their disciplined disengagement allowed other Imperial elements to evacuate in good order, preserving strength for the coming conflict with the Tyranids. The invasion of Targus 8 stands as perhaps the most definitive demonstration of the Raptors' guerrilla warfare capabilities. When a massive Orc Wa under Warboss Grimtooth Skullsplitter overwhelmed Imperial defenses on this vital agricultural world in 931, conventional military wisdom suggested the planet was lost. The Orcs outnumbered defending forces by at least 20-1, with more greenskins arriving by the day as the Wa gathered momentum. Rather than abandoning Targus 8 or committing to a hopeless frontal engagement, Chapter Master Isadin deployed the entire chapter in what would become a 2-year guerrilla campaign to disrupt Orc operations and prevent them from fully exploiting the planet's resources. This commitment of the chapter's full strength to a single campaign was unprecedented, reflecting both the strategic importance of Targus 8 and Isadin's confidence in his unconventional approach. The Raptors established hidden base camps in the planet's extensive mountain ranges, using natural cave systems expanded by their tech marines to create facilities invisible to Orc detection. From these bases, they launched hundreds of precision raids against Orc supply lines, fuel depots, ammunition stores, and leadership compounds. No single operation involved more than a company's worth of Space Marines, with most conducted by squad-sized elements operating independently across different regions. Sergeant Corvin's actions during this campaign exemplified the Raptors' approach. Leading a 10-man squad, Corvin conducted 37 separate operations against Orc fuel production facilities over a 6-month period. Each raid was meticulously planned based on intelligence gathered through extended observation, with attack vectors carefully selected to create the impression of a much larger force. By destroying the same type of target across different regions simultaneously, the Raptors created the illusion of multiple Imperial forces operating planet-wide, forcing the Orcs to disperse their strength rather than concentrate it. The psychological impact of these operations proved as significant as their material effect. The Orcs' natural tendency toward infighting intensified as different warbosses blamed each other for security failures. Grimtooth executed several of his own lieutenants suspected of incompetence, further degrading the WA's command structure. The constant, unpredictable attacks prevented the Greenskins from establishing the industrial base needed to sustain their campaign, effectively stalling their momentum. As the campaign progressed, the Raptors began incorporating local resistance elements into their operations. Imperial Guard survivors, Planetary Defense Force remnants, and even civilian volunteers received basic training in guerrilla tactics and were equipped with weapons recovered from Imperial supply caches or taken from defeated enemies. These auxiliary forces multiplied the Raptors' effectiveness, allowing them to gather intelligence and conduct diversionary operations that enabled the Space Marines to focus on high-value targets beyond the capabilities of conventional troops. The turning point came 18 months into the campaign, when a Raptors strike team, led by Captain Orleus, successfully eliminated Warboss Grimtooth during a rare public appearance. The operation involved a 5-man Talon team infiltrating an Orc settlement during victory celebrations, using the Greenskins' own revelry as cover to approach their target. Orleus personally delivered the killing shot with a stalker pattern bolter from less than 100 meters, an extraordinary risk that paid exceptional dividends. Grimtooth's death triggered an immediate leadership struggle among his subordinates, with several powerful knobs declaring themselves the new warboss and turning their forces against each other. The Raptors exploited this disarray by intensifying their operations, targeting aspiring leaders, and further fragmenting the Orc forces. Within 3 months, what had been a unified WA had degenerated into dozens of competing warbands fighting each other as often as they fought the humans. Imperial reinforcements arrived 26 months after the initial invasion, finding a significantly weakened Orc presence ready for conventional military clearance. The Raptors' guerrilla campaign had not only prevented the fall of Targus 8, but had effectively broken the back of what had been assessed as an unstoppable WA. The chapter suffered significant losses. 47 battle brothers fell during the campaign, but achieved a victory that conventional tactics could not have secured. The Targus 8 campaign became a case study in asymmetric warfare within certain circles of Imperial military planning. The Raptors' willingness to commit to a protracted guerrilla operation rather than a decisive battle demonstrated both their strategic flexibility and their patience, qualities not always associated with Astartes forces. Their integration of civilian auxiliaries also represented an uncommon approach for Space Marines, who typically operate independently from conventional forces. Beyond these major engagements, the Raptors participated in numerous smaller actions that further demonstrated their tactical flexibility. During the defense of Hive Tempestora against Chaos cultist uprisings, they deployed small kill teams to eliminate cult leaders while avoiding the mass civilian casualties that might have resulted from more conventional operations. On the frontier world of Kalak's Bane, they conducted environmental warfare against Dark Eldar raiders, using their superior knowledge of the planet's deadly ecosystem to turn the world itself against the invaders. The Raptors' relationship with their homeworld has been defined by adaptation and pragmatism, reflecting the chapter's core philosophy in all aspects of their existence. Originally established on the verdant death world of Badab Primaris in the Badab sector, the chapter's primary base of operations was lost during the tumultuous events of the Badab War, necessitating a fundamental reconsideration of how they would structure their chapter organization going forward. Badab Primaris itself was a world of stark contrasts and deadly beauty. Covered in dense jungle terrain interspersed with mountain ranges and deep valley systems, the planet presented an ideal training ground for a chapter that valued adaptability and environmental awareness. The world's ecosystem featured a remarkable diversity of predatory species, many of which had evolved sophisticated hunting methods that made them lethal even to augmented Astartes. Neophytes undergoing training would spend months navigating these dangers, learning to read environmental cues and adapt to rapidly changing threat conditions. The chapter's original fortress monastery, known as the Eyrie, was constructed into the side of the largest mountain on the planet's northern continent. Rather than clearing the surrounding jungle, the Raptors incorporated the natural environment into their defenses, using the dense vegetation as both concealment and a natural obstacle course. Approach routes were deliberately left unmarked, with hidden defense systems integrated so seamlessly with the natural environment that even other space marines visiting the facility often failed to detect them until deliberately revealed by their hosts. When the Badab War erupted, and Chapter Master Laius Isadin made the decision to withdraw from Badab Primaris, the Raptors implemented a scorched earth protocol for their fortress monastery. All geneseed samples, ancient technologies, and chapter relics were evacuated, while critical systems were rigged with demolition charges to prevent their exploitation by secessionist forces. The physical structure was left largely intact but rendered functionally useless, its machine spirits and cogitators wiped clean of all data. The destruction of Badab Primaris itself during the final phases of the war, subjected to exterminatus by loyalist forces to prevent its use as a future rebel stronghold, eliminated any possibility of the Raptors returning to their original home. This catastrophic loss forced the chapter to reconsider fundamental aspects of their organization and infrastructure. Rather than immediately establishing a new permanent fortress monastery, Isadin implemented what would later be termed the Distributed Sanctuary Protocol. This approach dispersed chapter assets across multiple locations within their newly assigned recruitment zone in the primogenitor sector, with no single facility containing critical concentrations of personnel or resources. This distribution was designed to prevent a single strike from crippling the chapter's operational capabilities, reflecting lessons learned from the Badab conflict. The primary administrative hub for this distributed network was established on Sargashan, a temperate world featuring diverse biomes ranging from dense forests to arid steppes. Unlike Badab Primaris, Sargashan was not a death world, though its frontier regions harbored sufficient dangers to provide challenging training environments. The planet's human population, concentrated in several modest hive clusters, provided both recruitment opportunities and a workforce for maintaining chapter facilities. The Raptors' presence on Sargashan deliberately maintained a low profile compared to the imposing fortress monasteries of many chapters. Their primary facility, known as Talon's Rest, was constructed into a mountain range 2,000 kilometers from the nearest human settlement. The external structure featured minimal ornamentation, its architecture emphasizing function over form with defensive positions seamlessly integrated into the natural rock formations. From orbit, the facility appeared as little more than a mining outpost, its true scale and significance concealed beneath the mountain's surface. Within this outer shell lay a complex that, while modest by the standards of older chapters, contained all essential functions for chapter administration. The central reclusium housed the chapter's few remaining pre-Badab relics alongside battle trophies accumulated since their relocation. The apothecarian maintained state-of-the-art geneseed storage facilities with redundant preservation systems, a direct response to the near-catastrophic evacuation from their previous home. Training facilities emphasized practical combat scenarios rather than ceremonial drill spaces, with environmentally sealed chambers capable of simulating conditions ranging from vacuum to toxic atmospheres. Perhaps most telling was the chapter's approach to their fleet assets following the Badab War. Recognizing the vulnerability of a fixed headquarters, the Raptors invested heavily in expanding and enhancing their fleet capabilities. Their battle barge Rift Talon underwent extensive modifications, with additional command and control systems, expanded apothecarian facilities, and enhanced communication arrays that allowed it to function as a mobile fortress monastery when required. This vessel became Isadin's primary command post during major operations, enabling the chapter master to coordinate campaigns without being tied to a fixed location. This emphasis on mobility extended throughout the chapter's organizational structure. Each company maintained dedicated transport vessels equipped with modular command facilities, allowing them to operate independently for extended periods without requiring support from the main fortress monastery. These vessels carried not just combat forces, but also the technical support personnel, apothecaries, and logistics specialists needed for sustained operations, effectively functioning as self-contained chapter elements. The distribution of recruitment responsibilities represented another significant departure from traditional Astartes practice. Rather than drawing aspirants exclusively from Sargashan, the Raptors established recruitment operations across 5 worlds within the primogenitor sector. Each of these worlds presented different environmental challenges and cultural backgrounds, providing the chapter with a diverse pool of potential candidates and reducing their vulnerability to localized disasters or population fluctuations. Talon's Reach, a frontier world with extensive wilderness regions, provided aspirants hardened by constant struggle against aggressive native fauna. Mendaxis, a hive world with a strong military tradition, offered candidates with formal combat training and institutional discipline. Caloran, a feudal world whose population battled both harsh winters and frequent Xenos raids, produced aspirants with exceptional survival skills and adaptive mindsets. Ventress Prime, an industrial world with extensive mining operations, yielded candidates with technical aptitude and physical endurance developed in its dangerous underground complexes. Lastly, Sargashan itself provided aspirants from both its settled regions and frontier zones, offering a balance of civilized discipline and frontier adaptability. This distributed recruitment approach required a more complex infrastructure than traditional single-world systems. Each recruitment world hosted a modest chapter facility staffed by a small contingent of battle brothers, typically including a chaplain to oversee selection processes and several training sergeants to conduct initial assessments. These facilities, known as Talon outposts, served as preliminary screening centers where potential aspirants underwent basic testing before the most promising candidates were transported to Sargashan for final evaluation and implantation procedures. The relationship between these outposts and local populations varied significantly based on planetary conditions and cultural factors. On Mendaxis, the chapter maintained formal arrangements with the planetary government, receiving a tithe of promising candidates from the world's military academies. On Caloran, Raptors representatives traveled among the feudal domains, seeking out warriors who had distinguished themselves against raiders or survived particularly harsh winters. On Talon's Reach, where human settlements existed as isolated enclaves amid dangerous wilderness, the chapter's representatives observed frontier communities from afar, occasionally extracting individuals who demonstrated exceptional survival skills without the settlements even realizing the Space Marines had been watching. This diversity in recruitment sources contributed significantly to the chapter's adaptive capabilities. Aspirants from different worlds brought varied skill sets and perspectives, creating a more flexible force than could be developed from a homogeneous recruitment pool. The training regimen at Talon's Rest deliberately mixed candidates from different worlds, forcing them to learn from each other's strengths while developing a unified chapter identity that transcended their origins. The most sacred space within the Raptors' distributed infrastructure was the Genitorium Deep beneath Talon's Rest. This heavily fortified facility housed the chapter's gene seed storage, with environmental systems capable of maintaining optimal preservation conditions, even if all external power sources failed. Access to this chamber was restricted to the chief apothecary and chapter master, with multiple security systems incorporating both technological measures and Space Marine guardians drawn from the first company. Within the Genitorium lay the chapter's most precious relics, gene seed samples dating back to their founding, preserved in stasis fields and monitored continuously for signs of degradation or mutation. These samples represented the chapter's insurance against catastrophic losses, providing a baseline against which current gene seed could be measured, and a reserve from which the chapter could rebuild if disaster struck. The reverence with which these samples were treated reflected the Raptors' pragmatic understanding of their importance rather than mystical veneration. They were strategic assets of incalculable value, not objects of worship. Adjacent to the Genitorium stood the Hall of Adaptation, a chamber unique to the Raptors that housed records of the chapter's tactical innovations and environmental modifications. Here, Battle Brothers could study the solutions developed by their predecessors for various combat challenges, from specialized camouflage techniques for different environments to modified weapon configurations for specific tactical situations. This institutional knowledge repository emphasized the chapter's commitment to learning and adaptation, providing a resource that new generations could build upon rather than having to rediscover effective approaches through trial and error. The training facilities distributed across the Raptors' network of bases reflected their emphasis on practical combat skills over ceremonial displays. On Sargashan, the areas surrounding Talon's Rest included specialized training zones replicating various combat environments, dense forest regions for practicing stealth movement, rocky highlands for long-range marksmanship, and artificial urban complexes for close-quarters combat. These facilities emphasized realistic conditions over formalized training scenarios, with live ammunition used whenever practical and environmental factors like weather and visibility deliberately varied to challenge trainees. The chapter's approach to relics and historical artifacts differed significantly from many of their cousins. Having lost many of their original relics during the evacuation from Badab Primaris, the Raptors maintained a utilitarian perspective on such items. Those ancient weapons and equipment pieces that survived were not sealed in stasis fields for display, but remained in active service, assigned to officers and veterans who could employ them effectively on the battlefield. The chapter believed that such artifacts honored their creators through continued use rather than reverent preservation. This practical approach extended to how the chapter recorded its own history. Rather than the elaborate illuminated tomes favored by many chapters, the Raptors maintained their records in a highly systematized digital archive focused on tactical lessons and practical knowledge. Battle reports emphasized objective analysis of what strategies proved effective rather than heroic narratives, with particular attention paid to identifying adaptations that might prove useful in future conflicts. This archive was regularly updated and distributed throughout the chapter's facilities, ensuring that knowledge gained in one location could benefit Battle Brothers operating elsewhere. The most distinctive feature of the Raptors' infrastructure was perhaps their approach to defensive systems. Drawing on their experiences during the Badab War, they developed what they termed recursive defense, layered security systems designed to remain effective even after partial compromise. Each Raptors facility incorporated multiple independent defense networks that could function autonomously if others failed, with command protocols distributed across multiple systems rather than centralized in vulnerable nexus points. These defenses emphasized concealment and misdirection over raw firepower. Approaching Talon's Rest, an uninvited visitor would encounter few obvious weapons emplacements or defensive barriers. Instead, the surrounding terrain was subtly modified to channel movement along predictable vectors, with hidden auspex arrays tracking approach patterns and automated systems evaluating potential threats. Only when unauthorized entities reached certain trigger points would the more obvious defensive systems activate, weapons platforms rising from concealed bunkers, void shield generators powering up from dormant states, and pre-sighted heavy weapons opening fire from camouflaged positions. The Raptors' distributed approach to chapter infrastructure represented both a practical response to their experiences during the Badab War and a philosophical statement about their values. By avoiding centralization of critical assets and maintaining mobility as a core organizational principle, they created a chapter structure remarkably resistant to decapitation strikes or catastrophic losses. This approach sacrificed some of the grandeur and tradition associated with ancient fortress monasteries, but provided a level of resilience that proved its worth repeatedly in subsequent decades. As the 42nd millennium dawned and the galaxy descended into even greater turmoil with the formation of the Great Rift, the wisdom of this distributed approach became increasingly apparent. While chapters with traditional single-site fortress monasteries sometimes found themselves cut off from recruitment worlds or isolated by warp storms, the Raptors' dispersed infrastructure allowed them to maintain operational capabilities even when specific facilities became temporarily inaccessible. This adaptability, born from necessity after the loss of their original home, became one of their greatest strengths in an increasingly unpredictable galaxy. The Raptors' combat doctrine stands as one of the most distinctive and pragmatic approaches to warfare among the Adeptus Astartes. Unlike chapters that adhere rigidly to traditional tactics or those that seek glory through heroic but costly engagements, the Raptors have developed a methodology centered around adaptability, precision, and tactical efficiency. This approach, refined through millennia of conflict across countless battlefields, represents the perfect synthesis of their Ravenguard lineage and their unique chapter culture. At the core of the Raptors' combat philosophy lies the principle of adaptive warfare. Rather than applying standardized tactical templates regardless of circumstances, the chapter approaches each engagement as a unique problem requiring specific solutions. Before committing to battle, Raptors commanders conduct thorough analysis of the operational environment, enemy composition, available resources, and strategic objectives. This assessment process, formalized in what the chapter calls the Adaptive Response Protocol, enables them to identify the most efficient approach for each specific situation. Captain Laius Isadin, during the Badab War, exemplified this methodology when tasked with eliminating a heavily fortified secessionist position on Signax. Initial tactical estimates suggested a frontal assault would result in approximately 40% casualties among attacking forces. Rather than accepting these losses as the cost of victory, Isadin deployed reconnaissance elements to identify structural vulnerabilities in the enemy fortifications. After 3 days of careful observation, his forces executed a precision strike against power distribution nodes that supported the position's void shields. With these defenses compromised, a minimal force of Devastator squads eliminated key weapons emplacements, creating a breach that could be exploited without the projected casualties. This emphasis on reconnaissance forms a central pillar of the Raptors' combat doctrine. The chapter invests significantly more resources in intelligence gathering than most Astartes formations, deploying specialized scout teams days or even weeks ahead of main forces. These teams, typically comprising 2 to 5 battle brothers equipped with enhanced Auspex arrays and long-range Vox systems, establish comprehensive surveillance networks around target areas. They document enemy patrol patterns, identify command structures, map defensive emplacements, and assess environmental factors that might influence combat operations. The intelligence gathered through these operations feeds into remarkably detailed operational planning. Raptors' battle plans include primary, secondary, and tertiary approaches for each objective, with specific trigger conditions for switching between them as circumstances evolve. These plans emphasize flexibility rather than rigid execution, with squad leaders granted significant autonomy to adapt to changing battlefield conditions within the framework of overall mission parameters. This flexibility extends to the chapter's approach to squad composition and equipment loadouts. Rather than adhering strictly to codex-defined squad types, the Raptors frequently create mission-specific teams, drawing members from different tactical specializations. A strike force might combine elements of tactical, devastator, and assault squads, with each battle brother selected for specific skills relevant to the operation at hand. Equipment distribution follows a similarly practical approach, with weapons and support systems allocated based on mission requirements rather than traditional squad designations. During the Lycanthos Drift campaign, this approach proved particularly effective against Eldar raiders, who had consistently outmaneuvered more conventional Imperial forces. Rather than deploying standard tactical squads with balanced loadouts, Captain Marrow's assembled strike teams specifically configured to counter Eldar mobility. These teams combined heavy weapons specialists equipped with multi-trackers to engage fast-moving targets, assault elements with jump packs to match Eldar maneuverability, and tactical marines with specialized ammunition effective against the Xenos composite armor. This tailored force composition neutralized the Eldar's traditional advantages, allowing the Raptors to dictate the terms of engagement rather than responding to enemy initiatives. The Raptors' preference for guerrilla warfare represents another distinctive aspect of their combat doctrine. Even when operating at chapter strength, they rarely engage in frontal assaults or set-piece battles, instead employing hit-and-run tactics that maximize their advantages while minimizing exposure to enemy strengths. This approach typically involves multiple small unit actions coordinated across a broad operational area, creating the impression of a much larger force while presenting minimal targets for enemy counterattacks. On Targus 8, facing a massive Orkwa that outnumbered Imperial defenders by at least 20-1, the Raptors deployed their entire chapter in what became a 2-year guerrilla campaign. Operating from concealed forward bases in the planet's mountain ranges, they conducted hundreds of precision raids against Ork supply lines, fuel depots, and leadership compounds. No single operation involved more than a company's worth of Space Marines, with most conducted by squad-sized elements operating independently across different regions. This approach prevented the Orks from bringing their numerical advantage to bear, while the constant, unpredictable attacks degraded the WA's cohesion and eventually triggered leadership conflicts that fragmented the Greenskin forces. The effectiveness of these guerrilla operations stems largely from the chapter's mastery of asymmetric tactics. Recognizing that direct confrontation often favors the numerically superior force, the Raptors specialize in identifying and exploiting enemy vulnerabilities that can be targeted with minimal resources. These vulnerabilities might include logistical dependencies, command structure weaknesses, or psychological factors that can be manipulated to disrupt enemy operations. During the Damocles Gulf Crusade, Raptors forces identified that Tau firebase networks, while formidably armed, depended on regular supply convoys traveling through mountainous terrain with limited viable routes. Rather than attacking the heavily defended firebase themselves, the Raptors established ambush positions along these supply corridors. By eliminating several key convoys, they forced the Tau to either abandon their forward positions or operate with severely restricted ammunition and power supplies, creating vulnerabilities that larger Imperial forces could then exploit. This approach extends to the chapter's treatment of civilian populations in conflict zones. Unlike some chapters that view non-combatants as irrelevant to military operations, the Raptors recognize that civilian communities represent both potential intelligence sources and strategic assets. Their operations typically include provisions for managing civilian populations, not from compassion, but from the pragmatic understanding that civilian casualties create strategic complications and waste potentially useful human resources. The Raptors' preference for precision strikes over frontal assaults represents perhaps the most distinctive element of their combat doctrine. Where many chapters employ overwhelming force to crush opposition through superior firepower and combat prowess, the Raptors identify critical nodes within enemy systems and target them with surgical precision. This approach minimizes ammunition expenditure, reduces battle brother casualties, and often achieves strategic objectives more efficiently than brute force methods. On Kalax Bane, facing entrenched Dark Eldar raiders who had established multiple strongholds across the planet's northern continent, the Raptors deployed a single strike team of 15 battle brothers rather than committing larger forces. This team, led by Sergeant Corven, infiltrated the area through treacherous marsh terrain considered impassable by the Dark Eldar. After 7 days of careful movement and observation, they identified the central homunculus laboratory that supported the raiders' operations. A precisely coordinated attack destroyed this facility and eliminated the homunculus, depriving the Dark Eldar of their ability to repair combat injuries. Within weeks, attrition from ongoing skirmishes with local defense forces had reduced the raiders' numbers to the point where they abandoned the planet entirely, an outcome achieved with minimal Raptors casualties and resource expenditure. This emphasis on precision extends to the chapter's approach to marksmanship and fire discipline. Raptors' battle brothers undergo more extensive training in target acquisition and weapons handling than is standard among Astartes, with particular focus on long-range engagement and ammunition efficiency. The chapter's training protocols require battle brothers to maintain accuracy standards 30% higher than those mandated by the Codex Astartes, with particular emphasis on headshots and targeting of weak points in enemy armor. During the scouring of Rax, a Raptors detachment deployed in support of Krieg Death Corps operations demonstrated this precision focus. While other Astartes units engaged in close-quarters clearing operations, the Raptors established elevated firing positions overlooking key approach routes. From these vantage points, they conducted systematic elimination of enemy heavy weapons teams and commanders attempting to organize counterattacks against the advancing Imperial forces. Each Raptor's battle brother averaged fewer shots fired than their counterparts from other chapters, but achieved significantly higher kill ratios, particularly against high-value targets that might otherwise have inflicted substantial casualties on the Death Corps infantry. The chapter's masterful use of terrain represents another cornerstone of their combat methodology. Raptors commanders conduct extensive analysis of battlefield topography before engagement, identifying features that can be exploited for tactical advantage. These might include elevated positions providing superior fields of fire, natural choke points where enemy forces can be channeled into killing zones, or concealed approach routes that enable surprise attacks against vulnerable targets. This terrain exploitation extends beyond simply identifying existing features. The Raptors actively modify their operational environment when circumstances permit. Before engagement, scout teams may establish hidden supply caches, prepare concealed firing positions, or place demolition charges at key structural points. These preparations create a battlefield architecture that favors their preferred tactics while degrading enemy capabilities. During the defense of Hive Tempestora against Chaos cultist uprisings, the Raptors arrived 3 days before the expected culmination of cult activities. Rather than immediately engaging identified cult cells, they used this time to modify the urban environment systematically. Sewer access points near cult gathering places were rigged with remote detonated charges. Elevated positions overlooking likely approach routes were reinforced and equipped with pre-sighted heavy weapons. Building structural supports in potential ambush locations were weakened to allow controlled collapse when needed. When the cultists finally emerged in force, they found themselves operating in an environment that had been comprehensively engineered to ensure their destruction, with every attempted maneuver channeling them into prepared killing zones. Environmental factors beyond physical terrain also feature prominently in Raptors' tactical planning. Weather conditions, atmospheric properties, light levels, and even local flora and fauna are analyzed for potential tactical applications. The chapter maintains extensive databases documenting how these factors affect various weapon systems, sensor capabilities, and troop movements, allowing them to predict and exploit environmental effects that other forces might simply endure as inconveniences. On the frontier world of Kalak's Bane, they conducted environmental warfare against Dark Eldar raiders, using their superior knowledge of the planet's deadly ecosystem to turn the world itself against the invaders. By deliberately disturbing the nesting sites of highly aggressive indigenous avians during Dark Eldar operations, they forced the raiders to fight on 2 fronts simultaneously. Similarly, they identified that certain native plant pollens triggered catastrophic reactions in the Dark Eldar's combat stimulants, and deliberately scheduled operations during peak pollination periods to exploit this vulnerability. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the Raptors' combat doctrine is their approach to battlefield withdrawal. In a culture where many chapters view retreat as dishonorable regardless of circumstances, the Raptors maintain that strategic disengagement represents a legitimate and often necessary tactical option. When ammunition runs low, when casualties mount beyond sustainable levels, or when objectives become unattainable, they recognize that preserving their forces for future operations serves the Emperor better than a glorious last stand. This philosophy was demonstrated during the defense of Hive Tartarus against the Chaos Warband, known as the Purge. When toxic gas attacks rendered the upper Hive levels indefensible, Captain Salak ordered a fighting withdrawal to predetermined defensive positions in the mid-Hive rather than holding ground at any cost. This decision allowed the Raptors to preserve their strength while channeling enemy forces into prepared killing zones. The subsequent counterattack reclaimed the upper Hive with minimal casualties, whereas maintaining the original positions would likely have resulted in the annihilation of the defending forces. The Raptors' combat doctrine produces battle brothers who approach warfare with calculated precision rather than zealous fury. They value efficiency over glory, results over recognition, and adaptation over tradition. A Raptors squad typically engages from optimal range with precisely targeted fire, maneuvers to maintain tactical advantage, and withdraws when objectives are completed rather than seeking additional combat for its own sake. This approach has sometimes earned them criticism from more traditional chapters who mistake pragmatism for lack of courage, but the effectiveness of their methods is difficult to dispute. In the increasingly chaotic warfare of the 42nd millennium, with Imperial forces stretched thin across countless fronts, the Raptors' efficient approach to combat has proven particularly valuable. Their ability to achieve strategic objectives with minimal resource expenditure allows them to conduct successful operations in theaters where larger forces cannot be deployed or sustained. As the Imperium faces threats from all quarters, the value of Space Marines who can adapt to any battlefield condition and accomplish missions through precision rather than brute force becomes increasingly apparent. Chapter Master Lias Isadin, known throughout the sector as the Grim Reaper, embodies the Raptors' ethos of calculated efficiency and tactical brilliance. Ascending to chapter command in the late 900s of the 41st millennium, Isadin had already distinguished himself as a company captain with an uncanny ability to identify and exploit enemy weaknesses. His pale features, characteristic of the Raptors' gene-seed expression, are marked by a network of fine scars, each the result of calculated risks rather than reckless engagement. Isadin's leadership style emphasizes thorough analysis and precise execution over inspirational rhetoric. He rarely addresses the entire chapter, preferring instead to communicate through detailed operational directives and post-mission assessments. When he does speak directly to his battle brothers, his words are measured and pragmatic, focusing on tactical insights rather than appeals to glory or tradition. This approach has sometimes created friction when coordinating with other Imperial forces, particularly those accustomed to more charismatic leadership, but the results of his methodical command are difficult to dispute. The chapter master's tactical acumen was most prominently displayed during the Badab War. Faced with the difficult decision of whether to support Luft-Huron's secession or remain loyal to the Imperium, Isadin conducted a thorough analysis of the strategic situation, gathering intelligence on Huron's activities while maintaining a facade of neutrality. His decision to evacuate the chapter from Badab Primaris before hostilities fully erupted preserved their strength while demonstrating their loyalty to Terra, a characteristically pragmatic solution to a complex problem. Isadin's equipment reflects his practical approach to warfare. His power armor, while artificer-crafted, lacks the ornate decoration common to many chapter masters. Instead, it features enhanced sensory arrays, additional ammunition storage, and specialized camouflage systems that can be reconfigured for different environments. His primary weapon, a master-crafted bolt rifle designated Eagle's Talon, has been modified with an extended barrel, enhanced targeting cogitators, and a custom ammunition feed that virtually eliminates jamming, prioritizing reliable performance over impressive appearance. Perhaps Isadin's most remarkable quality is his tactical flexibility. Unlike commanders who develop a signature approach and apply it regardless of circumstances, the Grim Reaper adapts his methods to each specific engagement. During the Targus 8 campaign against Orc forces, he implemented a protracted guerrilla operation that gradually eroded the Wa's cohesion. On Signax, facing entrenched secessionist positions during the Badab War, he employed precision strikes against critical infrastructure rather than direct assault. When confronting Tyrannid splinter fleets in the Carthene sector, he developed specialized hunter-killer tactics targeting synapse creatures to disrupt the hive mind's control. This adaptive approach extends to his command structure. Rather than maintaining a fixed hierarchy, Isadin reorganizes his command staff based on the specific requirements of each campaign. Battle brothers with particular expertise relevant to current operations are temporarily elevated to advisory positions regardless of their formal rank within the chapter. This meritocratic system ensures that tactical decisions are informed by the most relevant experience available, though it sometimes confuses outsiders accustomed to more rigid command protocols. Isadin's relationship with other Imperial organizations reflects both his pragmatism and the Raptors' somewhat isolated position within the Adeptus Astartes. He maintains formal but distant relations with other chapter masters, engaging in necessary coordination without the brotherhood sometimes found between more closely aligned chapters. With Imperial Guard commanders, he establishes clear operational parameters that maximize the effectiveness of combined forces while minimizing the cultural friction that often occurs between Astartes and mortal troops. The Inquisition has found Isadin to be a reliable, if somewhat reluctant ally. His analytical approach and emphasis on intelligence gathering make the Raptors particularly effective when supporting inquisitorial operations, though he has occasionally clashed with more zealous inquisitors whose ideological fervor overrides tactical considerations. These conflicts rarely escalate to open disagreement, as Isadin typically finds ways to accomplish mission objectives while minimizing unnecessary risks or collateral damage. Captain Aedius Orleus commands the Raptors' 3rd Company and serves as Isadin's most trusted lieutenant. Where the chapter master embodies calculated precision, Orleus represents adaptive improvisation. His background as a scout sergeant gave him exceptional skills in environmental exploitation and field modification of equipment, talents he has employed to great effect in his current role. Orleus first distinguished himself during the Damocles Gulf Crusade, where his company was deployed against Tau forces on the frontier world of Silkel. When conventional engagement proved ineffective against the Tau's superior ranged firepower, Orleus adapted his approach, implementing a series of night raids against their supply lines and communications infrastructure. By targeting the Tau's water purification facilities in the desert environment, he forced them to either withdraw to secondary positions or operate at reduced effectiveness due to water rationing, a strategy that demonstrated his understanding of logistical vulnerabilities. The captain's most notable achievement came during the Battle of Hesperus in the Badab War. After initial engagement with Executioner's forces resulted in mounting casualties with minimal strategic progress, Orleus made the controversial decision to withdraw his forces from the main battlefront. This action, executed without consultation with Allied commanders, earned harsh criticism from the Salamanders and other loyalist forces. However, Orleus had not abandoned the field entirely. He had redeployed his forces for a precision strike against the Executioner's command post, which scout teams had located during the fighting. This operation eliminated 3 Executioner's chaplains and disrupted their command structure at a critical juncture, ultimately enabling a more decisive victory than continued frontal engagement would have achieved. Orleus's equipment choices reflect his background in reconnaissance and asymmetric warfare. He favors lighter armor configurations that maximize mobility, often foregoing a helmet in favor of enhanced bionic visual implants that provide superior environmental awareness. His preferred weapons include a pair of master-crafted bolt pistols modified for silent operation and a power sword with an unusually slender blade optimized for precision rather than brute force. These choices sometimes draw questioning looks from other Astartes commanders accustomed to more traditional loadouts, but their effectiveness in Orleus's hands is undeniable. The relationship between Isadon and Orleus exemplifies the Raptors' approach to command. Though they employ different tactical styles, they share a fundamental commitment to efficiency and adaptability. Their complementary methods allow the chapter to maintain both strategic coherence and tactical flexibility, with Isadon providing the overarching analytical framework within which Orleus's improvisational genius can operate most effectively. Chief Librarian Mercutian represents one of the most distinctive interpretations of the Librarius among the Adeptus Astartes. Unlike the battle psychers common in many chapters, Mercutian specializes in divination and tactical analysis, using his psychic abilities to enhance the Raptors' already formidable intelligence-gathering capabilities. His pale features, rendered almost translucent by the chapter's gene seed, contrast sharply with eyes that gleam with barely contained psychic energy when he employs his powers. Mercutian's approach to psychic warfare emphasizes subtlety over spectacle. Rather than hurling destructive energies or engaging in dramatic psychic duels, he focuses on detecting enemy movements, identifying concealed threats, and analyzing probability matrices to determine optimal engagement strategies. During the scouring of Vrax, he provided advance warning of enemy ambushes by psychically detecting the emotional signatures of concealed troops, allowing Raptors' forces to avoid or counter these threats before they materialized. The librarian's most valuable contribution comes through his ability to process and synthesize vast amounts of intelligence data. When provided with reconnaissance reports, environmental scans, and historical combat records, Mercutian can identify patterns and vulnerabilities that might escape even the most experienced tactical analysts. This capability proved particularly valuable during operations against Eldar forces, whose ancient minds and complex strategies often confound conventional Imperial intelligence methods. Mercutian maintains a close working relationship with the chapter's scout elements, providing psychic oversight for reconnaissance operations and receiving their intelligence reports directly rather than through the normal command hierarchy. This arrangement occasionally creates tension with company captains, who sometimes feel bypassed in the information flow, but the tactical advantages it provides have consistently justified the procedural irregularity. Master of Sanctity, Drevis Mordax, oversees the spiritual health of the chapter with the same pragmatic efficiency that characterizes all Raptors' operations. Unlike the fire and brimstone preachers common in many chapters, Mordax approaches his role with analytical detachment, viewing faith as a practical tool for maintaining psychological resilience rather than an end in itself. His sermons focus on adaptability, precision, and tactical awareness as expressions of devotion rather than martyrdom or unthinking sacrifice. Mordax's background as a field chaplain during the Lycanthos Drift campaign shaped his approach to spiritual leadership. After witnessing the psychological impact of protracted guerrilla operations on battle brothers accustomed to more direct engagements, he developed specialized meditative techniques to help them manage the cognitive strain of extended covert deployments. These methods, now incorporated into standard Raptors training, enable battle brothers to maintain operational effectiveness during missions that might last months or even years with minimal external support. The Master of Sanctity also oversees the chapter's approach to recruitment and indoctrination, ensuring that aspirants develop not just physical capabilities, but the psychological resilience and analytical mindset essential to the Raptors' combat doctrine. Under his guidance, neophytes undergo extensive mental conditioning focused on emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, and decision-making under pressure. These exercises produce battle brothers who approach warfare with calculated determination rather than religious fervor, making decisions based on tactical reality rather than emotional impulse. Mordax's relationship with the ecclesiarchy exemplifies the Raptors' pragmatic approach to imperial institutions. He maintains necessary formal connections with the imperial cult while keeping actual interaction to a minimum, recognizing that the zealotry common among imperial priests often conflicts with the chapter's emphasis on tactical efficiency. When coordination becomes necessary, he serves as a translator of sorts, reframing the Raptors' practical approach in terms acceptable to ecclesiastical authorities without compromising their operational methodology. Captain Salak of the 5th Company earned his reputation during defensive operations on Hive Tartarus against the Chaos Warband, known as the Purge. When toxic gas attacks rendered the upper Hive levels indefensible, Salak ordered a fighting withdrawal to predetermined defensive positions in the mid-Hive rather than holding ground at any cost. This decision allowed his forces to preserve their strength while channeling enemy forces into prepared killing zones. The subsequent counterattack reclaimed the upper Hive with minimal casualties, whereas maintaining the original positions would likely have resulted in the annihilation of the defending forces. This operation exemplified Salak's approach to command, a perfect balance of strategic withdrawal and decisive counterattack. Unlike some officers who view retreat as inherently dishonorable, he recognizes that temporary disengagement often creates opportunities for more effective subsequent operations. This perspective has occasionally created tension when coordinating with other Imperial forces, particularly those with more aggressive doctrines, but the results of his methodical approach are difficult to dispute. Salak specializes in urban warfare, having developed specific tactics for operating in the confined spaces and complex three-dimensional environments of Imperial hives. His company trains extensively in room-clearing procedures, vertical movement techniques, and methods for using urban infrastructure as both cover and weapon. These specialized skills have made the 5th Company the chapter's preferred deployment option for operations in densely populated areas where collateral damage must be minimized. Sergeant Corvan leads one of the chapter's most effective Talon teams, specializing in deep reconnaissance and high-value target elimination. His background as a scout sniper gave him exceptional skills in stealth movement and marksmanship, which he has refined through decades of operational experience. During the Targus 8 campaign against Orc forces, Corvan conducted 37 separate operations against fuel production facilities over a 6-month period, each meticulously planned based on intelligence gathered through extended observation. Corvan's most notable achievement came on the frontier world of Kalak's Bane, facing entrenched Dark Eldar raiders who had established multiple strongholds across the planet's northern continent. Leading a strike team of 15 battle brothers, he infiltrated the area through treacherous marsh terrain considered impassable by the Dark Eldar. After 7 days of careful movement and observation, they identified the central homunculus laboratory that supported the raiders' operations. Their precisely coordinated attack destroyed this facility and eliminated the homunculus, depriving the Dark Eldar of their ability to repair combat injuries. Within weeks, attrition from ongoing skirmishes with local defense forces had reduced the raiders' numbers to the point where they abandoned the planet entirely. This operation demonstrated Corvan's talent for identifying critical vulnerabilities in enemy systems and targeting them with surgical precision. Rather than engaging the Dark Eldar's combat forces directly, a prospect that would have required significantly more resources and likely resulted in substantial casualties, he recognized that eliminating their regenerative capabilities would create an unsustainable attrition problem for the raiders. This approach achieved the strategic objective of liberating Kalak's Bane with minimal Raptors casualties and resource expenditure. Corvan's equipment reflects his specialization in covert operations. His armor incorporates additional sound dampening systems around joint servos, enhanced camouflage capabilities that can adapt to changing environmental conditions, and specialized sensory equipment that provides superior awareness in low light conditions. His primary weapon, a stalker pattern bolter with custom modifications to the targeting system and ammunition feed, enables precision elimination of targets at extreme ranges under adverse conditions. Chief Apothecary Varankaris oversees the chapter's gene seed and monitors the distinctive mutation that affects all Raptors' battle brothers. Having served with the Death Watch for 2 decades before returning to the chapter, Karis brings a broader perspective on Astartes' physiology than many chapter apothecaries. His extensive gene seed purity logs document the Raptors' divergence from the Ravenguard template in precise detail, tracking the expression of their unique characteristics across multiple generations of battle brothers. Karis has developed specialized treatments to address the vulnerabilities created by the chapter's reduced melanin production, including dermal protective compounds for operations on high radiation worlds and ocular enhancement procedures that improve visual acuity in bright conditions. These interventions allow Raptors' battle brothers to operate effectively in environments that might otherwise prove challenging for their physiology, expanding the chapter's operational range without compromising their distinctive genetic identity. The Apothecary's most significant contribution to the chapter comes through his rigorous gene seed monitoring protocols. Every progenitor gland harvested from a fallen battle brother undergoes comprehensive analysis before being cleared for implantation in a new neophyte, with particular attention paid to signs of instability or deviation. This vigilance has helped maintain the Raptors' genetic stability despite the issues common to the 21st founding, preserving their combat effectiveness, while other chapters from the same founding have succumbed to mutation or degeneration. Techmarine Vortigern oversees much of the chapter's equipment modification, developing specialized adaptations that enhance the Raptors' combat effectiveness in various environments. His approach to the Omnissiah's teachings emphasizes practical application over ritual observance, viewing technology as a tool to be optimized rather than a mystery to be venerated. This perspective occasionally creates tension with more orthodox representatives of the Mechanicus, but the results of his modifications are difficult to dispute. Vortigern's most notable contributions include the development of enhanced camouflage systems that can adapt to different operational environments, sound suppression technology for Astartes armor that significantly reduces the acoustic signature of moving battle brothers, and modified targeting systems that compensate for the chapter's gene seed-related light sensitivity while providing superior threat detection capabilities. These innovations, while lacking the aesthetic refinement valued by many chapters, measurably enhance combat performance in ways that align perfectly with the Raptors' emphasis on practical effectiveness. The formation of the Great Rift in the year 999 of the 41st millennium fundamentally altered the strategic landscape of the Imperium, creating unprecedented challenges for even the most adaptable Space Marine chapters. For the Raptors, whose doctrine already emphasized flexibility and pragmatic response to changing circumstances, this cataclysmic event necessitated a comprehensive reassessment of their operational capabilities and deployment patterns. When the Cicatrix Maledictum tore reality asunder, the Raptors found themselves in a relatively fortunate position compared to many chapters. Their distributed organizational structure, established after the Badab War, proved remarkably resilient to the disruption caused by the Great Rift. With assets spread across multiple worlds in the primogenitor sector, rather than concentrated in a single fortress monastery, the chapter avoided the catastrophic losses suffered by more centralized formations when warp storms isolated or destroyed their primary bases. Initial astrographic analysis conducted by Chief Librarian Mercutian confirmed that while warp travel had become significantly more hazardous throughout their operational area, none of their primary recruitment worlds had been completely cut off. Communication between chapter elements became more difficult and less reliable, but the independent command protocols already established for company-level operations allowed Raptors forces to maintain effectiveness even with reduced coordination from chapter command. Chapter Master Isadin implemented what he termed the Fragmented Theater Protocol in response to these conditions. This approach formalized the already substantial operational autonomy granted to company captains, providing them with expanded strategic guidance rather than specific tactical directives. Each company was assigned a primary sphere of responsibility within the chapter's operational area, with authority to respond to threats as they emerged rather than waiting for orders from higher echelons that might never arrive through the disrupted astropathic networks. The arrival of Robute Guilliman's Indomitus crusade in the primogenitor sector, approximately 3 years after the formation of the Great Rift, brought the Raptors face to face with the Primaris Space Marines. Unlike some chapters that viewed these new warriors with suspicion or resentment, the Raptors' pragmatic nature led them to recognize the strategic value of these enhanced Astartes immediately. Isadin personally met with representatives of Guilliman's forces to arrange for the integration of Primaris reinforcements into the chapter. The first contingent of Primaris Marines assigned to the Raptors comprised approximately 200 battle brothers, including both fresh recruits created from the chapter's gene seed and veterans of the unnumbered sons who had fought through the first phase of the Indomitus Crusade. These warriors brought with them not only enhanced physical capabilities, but also new tactical possibilities through their specialized unit types and advanced equipment. The integration process reflected the Raptors' methodical approach to all aspects of warfare. Rather than immediately deploying their new Primaris brothers in combat operations, Isadin established a 3-month acclimation period during which the newcomers would learn the chapter's distinctive combat doctrine, while veteran Raptors familiarized themselves with Primaris capabilities and equipment. This process took place primarily at Talon's Rest on Sargashan, with specialized training exercises designed to blend traditional Raptors tactics with the enhanced mobility and firepower offered by Primaris units. Captain Orleus, who oversaw much of this integration program, noted that the Primaris Marines displayed the same gene seed characteristics as their firstborn brothers, including the distinctive pale complexion and light sensitivity common to all Raptors. This confirmation that the chapter's genetic divergence persisted in the new generation of Astartes helped smooth the cultural integration, establishing a clear lineage between the existing chapter and its reinforcements. The tactical implications of Primaris technology were substantial for a chapter that already emphasized flexibility and precision. The enhanced range of bolt rifles aligned perfectly with the Raptors' preference for engaging targets from optimal distances, while the increased mobility of units like inceptors and suppressors offered new options for rapid deployment and fire support. The Vanguard formations, with their emphasis on stealth and reconnaissance, proved particularly compatible with existing Raptors doctrine. Techmarine Vortigern approached the new Mark 10 armor variants with characteristic pragmatism, immediately beginning work on modifications to enhance their compatibility with Raptors' tactical preferences. His team developed specialized camouflage systems for the new armor that maintained its enhanced protection while reducing visual signature, and modified the auto-sense systems to compensate for the chapter's gene seed-related light sensitivity. These adaptations ensured that the technological advantages of Primaris equipment complemented rather than disrupted the chapter's established combat methodology. The first deployment of integrated Primaris elements came during the Nemesis incursion in the Carthy system. A significant Necron force had emerged from dormancy on the mining world of Carthy Tertius, threatening several valuable Imperial installations. Captain Salak's 5th Company, reinforced with 2 squads of intercessors and a unit of suppressors, was tasked with securing the primary processing facility while Mechanicus forces evacuated critical technology. The operation demonstrated the potential of properly integrated Primaris capabilities within the Raptors' tactical framework. Scout teams identified the primary access routes being used by Necron forces, allowing Salak to position his intercessors at optimal engagement ranges along these approaches. When a flanking force of Necron wraiths threatened to circumvent these positions, the suppressors' enhanced mobility allowed them to rapidly redeploy and engage this threat before it could compromise the defensive perimeter. The success of this initial deployment led to accelerated integration of Primaris elements throughout the chapter. By the 5th year after their arrival, Primaris Marines comprised approximately 40% of the Raptors' fighting strength, with at least one Primaris squad in each company. This integration was not without challenges. The more aggressive combat instincts displayed by some Primaris battle brothers occasionally clashed with the chapter's emphasis on calculated efficiency, but the adaptive nature of both the chapter's culture and the individual Primaris Marines generally allowed these differences to be resolved constructively. The Raptors' participation in the broader Indomitus Crusade was characterized by their typical focus on specialized operations rather than mass engagements. While other chapters committed substantial forces to Guilliman's main battle groups, the Raptors primarily contributed reconnaissance and precision strike capabilities to specific theaters, where their particular skills would prove most valuable. During the liberation of the Odoser system, Raptors' Vanguard elements infiltrated deep behind Death Guard lines to identify the vector of a particularly virulent plague being used against Imperial populations. Their intelligence led to the location of a Biologus putrefier's laboratory hidden within an abandoned mining complex. Rather than requesting reinforcements for a frontal assault, the Raptors deployed a strike team comprising both Firstborn and Primaris specialists who eliminated the facility with minimal casualties while securing samples of the contagion for Mechanicus biologus study. This operation exemplified the evolving Raptors doctrine in the Indomitus era, combining the enhanced capabilities of Primaris Marines with the chapter's traditional emphasis on intelligence gathering and precision strikes. The inclusion of Vanguard infiltrators with their enhanced communications capabilities proved particularly valuable, allowing real-time coordination between reconnaissance elements and strike forces that had previously been difficult to maintain in hostile territory. As the Indomitus Crusade progressed, and the immediate crisis sparked by the Great Rift stabilized into a new, grim status quo, the Raptors gradually returned to their distributed operational pattern. Companies deployed across multiple war zones in the primogenitor sector and beyond, responding to threats as they emerged while maintaining the chapter's strategic coherence through periodic coordination with Issadan's command staff. The broader strategic situation created by the Great Rift presented both challenges and opportunities for the Raptors' approach to warfare. The increased isolation of many Imperial worlds and the disruption of traditional command structures created environments where small, self-sufficient Astartes forces could achieve disproportionate strategic impact. The chapter's emphasis on operational independence and resource efficiency made them particularly well-suited to operations in regions where reliable reinforcement or resupply could not be guaranteed. On the frontier world of Helios Quintus, a Raptors strike force comprising elements of the 2nd and 4th Companies conducted a 2-year campaign against a genestealer cult infestation without external support. Operating from concealed forward bases in the planet's mountain ranges, they systematically identified and eliminated cult cells while gathering intelligence on the organization's structure. Rather than attempting to purge the infestation through mass combat operations, they focused on precision elimination of hybrid leaders and the disruption of cult communications, gradually degrading the organization's effectiveness until conventional Imperial forces could complete the cleansing. This operation demonstrated the Raptors' ability to achieve strategic objectives with minimal resources in the challenging operational environment of the Imperium Nihilus. Their emphasis on intelligence gathering, target prioritization, and efficient use of combat assets allowed them to maintain effectiveness even when cut off from the broader Imperial military infrastructure, a capability that proved increasingly valuable as the traditional command and logistics networks of the Imperium struggled to function across the Great Rift. The chapter's future prospects in this fractured Imperium appear cautiously positive despite the unprecedented challenges facing all Imperial organizations. Their distributed structure and emphasis on self-sufficiency make them more resilient to the disruptions caused by the Great Rift than many more centralized formations. The integration of Primaris technology has enhanced their combat capabilities, while remaining compatible with their established tactical doctrine. Their preference for precision operations over mass engagements allows them to achieve strategic impact despite maintaining a relatively small operational footprint. Current intelligence indicates that the chapter maintains approximately 800 battle brothers, with ongoing recruitment and Primaris reinforcement gradually rebuilding toward full strength after losses suffered in various theaters since the opening of the Great Rift. Their primary recruitment worlds remain secure, though increased warp activity has made transportation of aspirants more hazardous and time-consuming. The chapter's fleet assets have been augmented with several new vessels provided through the Indomitus Crusade, enhancing their mobility and operational reach. The most significant ongoing conflict involving substantial Raptors forces is the Carthy defensive campaign against repeated Necron incursions throughout the subsector. Chapter Master Isadin has committed 3 companies to this theater, recognizing the strategic importance of the region's manufacturing and resource extraction capabilities to the broader Imperial war effort. The campaign has evolved into a complex series of precision strikes against Necron tombs and leadership assets rather than conventional battles for territory, playing to the Raptors' strengths in reconnaissance and targeted operations. Captain Orleus leads the primary battle group in this campaign, coordinating operations across multiple systems from the battle barge Rift Talon. His force includes substantial Primaris elements, particularly Vanguard formations, whose stealth capabilities have proven valuable in penetrating Necron security systems. Recent operations have focused on identifying and eliminating the command protocols, coordinating Necron activities across the subsector, with several successful strikes against cryptechs and overlords that have disrupted enemy operations. The Raptors' relationship with the broader Imperium remains characterized by their typical pragmatic approach to institutional interactions. They maintain necessary formal connections with the Adeptus Administratum, Mechanicus, and other Imperial organizations, while keeping actual interaction to the minimum required for operational effectiveness. When coordination becomes necessary, they focus on practical objectives rather than ceremonial aspects, sometimes creating friction with more tradition-bound Imperial representatives, but generally achieving effective cooperation on matters of substance. Guilliman's reforms to Imperial administration have generally aligned with the Raptors' preference for efficiency over tradition, creating opportunities for more productive interaction with the renewed Imperial hierarchy. The chapter has provided several officers as advisors to Crusade forces on asymmetric warfare tactics, while benefiting from improved logistical support and intelligence sharing through the restructured command networks established under the Primarch's direction. As the era Indomitus continues to unfold, the Raptors stand as a testament to the value of adaptation and pragmatism in an Imperium beset by unprecedented challenges. Their analytical approach to warfare, emphasis on intelligence gathering, and willingness to evolve their tactics to meet changing circumstances position them well to continue serving effectively despite the fractured state of the Imperium. While they may never achieve the renown of more celebrated chapters, their precise operations and efficient use of resources will likely continue making meaningful contributions to Imperial security in theaters where such approaches can achieve maximum effect. In a galaxy where resources are increasingly strained and traditional command structures increasingly unreliable, the Raptors' self-sufficient, adaptive approach to warfare represents not just a tactical preference, but a strategic necessity. Their legacy as pragmatic warriors, forged in the tumultuous circumstances of the 21st founding and refined through centuries of careful evolution, has prepared them uniquely for the grim reality of warfare in the shadow of the Great Rift. As the Imperium faces threats from all quarters with diminished resources and fragmented command, the value of Space Marines who can adapt to any battlefield condition and accomplish missions through precision rather than brute force becomes increasingly apparent. The Sons of Corax continue their vigilant watch, ready to strike with calculated precision wherever the Emperor's enemies present themselves.